If you like the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment for more videos like this.
Have you had a paranormal, supernatural, or demonic encounter while exploring abandoned places, haunted forests, or cursed outdoor locations? Tell us your story.
Encounter with some sort of creature. I moved into an old house in the middle of nowhere a few years ago, and I've had strange encounters since. My first encounter with this creature had been in the woods surrounding my house. I had been roaming around and exploring, as I loved to do at that time, and I had recently ventured deep into the woods. I heard something near me, which seemed to be a call for help, before being chased by something on all fours. There had been many other small experiences throughout the couple of years until my most recent encounter. This had happened one night in the safety of my house. I had a massive feeling of dread and what felt like just a pit in my stomach. I had looked out my window, which somewhat looks into the woods, and had seen what looked like a pale creature with pitch black eyes. The skin looked too tight, and it had 5 fingers, which were all too long and seemed pointy. The most terrifying part, though, was that it was smiling at me. I guess I wanted to share the story, but I also wanted to hear other people's perspectives on what could have been. So I recently got into urban exploring, so me and a friend decided to go. We went to an abandoned sanatorium. We went there in the afternoon and everything seemed fine. We look around the place, hospital beds, equipment, drips and notes were still there, and after a while me and this friend decide to play with a Ouija board. My friend is a non-believer, so we just did it for fun. So we sat down where the patients used to sleep and we begun to play. Nothing happened and so we left. We forgot to say goodbye. We did that later. Everything seemed fine. But fast forward a few weeks. I have seen shadows in my apartment. I sometimes get the feeling of being watched. I've had this tightening in my chest and I've had trouble sleeping, and when I do I dream of the same man over and over. I wonder if someone or something followed me home after that urban exploring. What should I do? I'm not sure what I experienced. Please help. So, a few weeks ago, I went camping with family in Montana. We were in the woods, and there was a nice river going through the park where we were. Late at night, according to my phone, at 12:01 a.m., I decided to go for some alone time near the river. I took a path that I hadn't seen when exploring during the day. It was wider than your average doorway, and nothing was growing in the path. The path had no grass or weeds, and its width remained consistent. I came across a bench overlooking the water, but the closer I got to it, the more uneasy I felt. I decided not to sit there and go to the beach instead and sit by the water. I got down there and was looking up at the moon and stars. They were beautiful since there was no light pollution and not a single cloud in the sky. I looked down to grab my lighter, and when I looked back up, I saw that the sky was black. There was no moon and no stars in the sky. I think to myself, whatever, and continue with what I'm doing. I was down there for about a half hour, according to my phone, and I started to hear a rustling behind me. I look behind me and see nothing. No leaves moving, no wind. Just silence. I shake it off and go back to watching waves. I hear it again, and I eventually get so freaked out, I run back to camp. I didn't go up the same way I went down but up another path the opposite way. I get to the camp road, and I look up, and the moon and stars are back. I run my ass back to the campsite. My boyfriend was looking at me like I was insane and said, "Wow, you weren't gone long." I looked at him and said, "I was gone for about 30 minutes. At least my phone said that, and it felt like I was gone that long." He looked at me funny and said, "No, you were gone for like a minute." I asked him what time it was, and he said, "It just turned 12:01. I am sufficiently confused by this and even more confused since I left at the same time I got back. I also walked by where the path was, and there was nothing there. Does anyone know what this may have been or what happened? I explored an abandoned hospital, and something or someone was following me. I reside near an old, abandoned hospital that has stood empty since the early 2000s. It's one of those places that locals frequently discuss, where kids dare each other to sneak in and share urban legends. I finally decided to check it out myself last weekend. I went alone, which in hindsight was probably a dumb move, but I wanted to take my time and really soak it in without distractions. The place is huge, with 4 floors, long hallways, and busted equipment still scattered around. It's like they just left mid-shift. About 20 minutes in, I started hearing footsteps behind me. At first, I figured it was an echo or maybe something falling from the ceiling. But the steps matched mine. When I stopped, they stopped. When I moved, they started again, just a beat behind. I called out, thinking maybe some other idiot snuck in too. Nothing. I doubled back, tried to follow the sound, and even went up and down a few floors. Every time I thought I was getting closer, the noise would shift. It felt like someone was deliberately staying just out of sight. Eventually I made it back to the front entrance. I made my way back to my car and proceeded to drive away. Now I would like to think that someone was in there with me, but I find that hard to believe because I tiptoed around that place like crazy and saw no one. Still one of the most bizarre experiences I have ever had. Is it me or the places I go? This situation occurred when I was either 20 or 21 years old, which was approximately 6 or 7 years ago. I was in college and studying wildlife and fisheries management. One course was silviculture, the growing and cultivation of trees, simple definition. For this class, we went on a field trip to a pine plantation to practice tree measurements and such. There were like 20 plus of us. All adults. Our assignment was to couple up and go measure trees, so my best friend at the time and I went off, far from the others because they were being loud. We also wanted to explore a bit. Others were slowly making their way toward us, but we were still a good 30 feet in front of everyone. We were actually coming up to the end of the plantation. It wasn't that big, just a small experimental plot. The pines seemed to end abruptly into a wide grassy field. As we got to the end, we slowed down. My friend was in front of me. We were talking quietly to each other when all of a sudden we heard laughing. A child laughing. The laugh was clear and coming from somewhere either in front of us or to the left of us. I didn't see anyone. Just heard the laughter. Like I mentioned earlier, there were only adults out there. The others were well behind us, and we were essentially in the middle of the woods. There were no houses near us or roads. I looked at my friend, and she was looking at me. Eyes wide. Simultaneously, we spun around and made our way back to the group as quickly as possible. Didn't look back. I don't remember mentioning anything to anyone when we got back, nor do we even talk about it to this day. I told my interns about the other encounters. I actually have a lot now that I think about it. One of my interns asked me if it's me that's causing these encounters or just the places I visit. I honestly don't know. I've mainly just blocked stuff out until now. It's been working for me so far. This happened about a year ago, and I still don't sleep right when it rains. I decided to explore this abandoned hotel with 2 of my friends, Zeke and Mari. It had been shut down since the late 90s, tucked way out near the edge of a forgotten highway. You could barely see it through the trees, all overgrown and sunken in. We weren't even planning to stay long. Just in and out, take some pics, get a rush, and bounce. When we arrived around 4 p.m., just before the sun began to set, the atmosphere instantly changed. The entrance wasn't even locked. The glass doors were broken, and something about the way the carpet inside still smelled faintly like old perfume and mold made my skin crawl. We decided to split up to cover more ground, which proved to be our first mistake. The place was weirdly huge, like way bigger than it looked from the outside. Some of the hallways curved in on themselves, and there were no working lights, obviously, so we relied on our phones. Zeke found the old ballroom. The mirrors were shattered, chairs upside down like there'd been a fight. However, what unsettled us was a single wheelchair positioned directly in the center of the room, facing the wall. No tracks. There was nothing surrounding it. It was just there. Mari found a hallway of suites. All the beds had the sheets tucked in. Crisp. Some had half-drunk water bottles on the nightstands, modern ones. I remember asking her if she was messing with us, but she was already starting to freak out. We tried to leave around 6:30. That's when we realized we didn't know where the exit was. I swear we went back the same way, but every turn led us deeper in. We'd find staircases that looped to the same floor and doors that opened to empty closets filled with shoes, all pointed toward the wall. The same size, same make, like someone had just placed them there. All waiting. And then the faces. I saw the first one in the reflection of a cracked mirror by the elevator shaft. It wasn't mine. The figure was pale, excessively tall, and smiling with a stretched out grin reminiscent of those seen in bad dreams. I turned around. Nothing. But the reflection stayed for another half second before vanishing. Mari screamed an hour later because she opened a utility closet, and there were dozens of porcelain dolls stacked from floor to ceiling, all with their eyes gouged out. Some of them still twitched when we passed. We finally gave up around 9:30 and just stayed in the old kitchen. We didn't sleep. Every now and then, we'd hear doors closing in the distance. Click. Click. Always in pairs. Always like footsteps walking. There was a rusted fridge with the words "Don't forget you're already here" scratched in over and over. We left when the sun rose. And the way out? It was 15 feet from where we were camped, hidden behind a plastic curtain we'd thought was just part of the wall. It led straight outside. No maze. No twists. I still wonder if that place moved while we were in it. I haven't returned since then. I have no intention of returning. However, there are moments when I close my eyes, and I could almost swear I see that same grinning face standing behind me in the mirror. I've made a mistake, I think. A couple weeks ago I traveled to Cambridge, Ontario, to explore the abandoned asylum. I went during the day for safety reasons. It was pretty normal as far as exploration goes. A couple strange items and some eerie-looking hallways. After about 20 minutes, I felt like someone was following me, or I wasn't alone in the building. I remained quiet for about 5 minutes, and I heard nothing, so I continued. I still felt something was following me, I just ignored it and continued on my way. On my way out I made my exit and closed the door. I swear I saw something in the window when I went to get into my car. Now this is where I think I made the mistake. Last night I woke up to footsteps in my house, and my washing machine turned on, no load inside. I turned it off, and when I went to get my morning Java this morning, the drawer was open. My girlfriend is away for work this weekend, so it's just me. There are no animals present either. Did something follow me back from the asylum? I'm terrified and excited at the same time. Is it just a glitch, or maybe me forgetting the drawer? Either way, I'm buying cameras today, and if I pick anything up, I'll share it. Strange encounter while out with friends. So first of all, it was late March/early April of last year. I started the day by going to help my friend install a new radio in his truck. While we were working on it, we threw out the idea of my girlfriend and the rest of our friends hanging out that night. Well, we live in a very small town with just about nothing to do, unless you want to drive 45 minutes to 1 hour away to go see a movie or go to an arcade, and we were all waiting on payday, so none of us really wanted to spend gas money to go that far. While we debated on what to do, one of our friends spoke up about a trail he had found while four-wheeler riding that he wanted to explore. It was pretty close by, so we decided to go there. Once we got there it had just turned dark, but just about everyone had a firearm in them in case we walked up on a bobcat or a black bear. The trail was not particularly long, short enough to still see my friend's truck from the end of it, so we walked through there with flashlights just looking around. After about 10 to 15 minutes, we decided we'd seen just about everything and started to walk back out. My girlfriend was walking in front of everyone, I was behind her, and the others were behind me. None of us were more than 5 feet apart from each other. I say this to point out that if any one of us made noise, we would all know who did it. We were almost out when we heard this booming, loud mix of a growl and bellow. It's important for me to say that where we live the biggest predators we have are black bears, and very rarely someone will report seeing a mountain lion. Those two animals have a very distinct sound, but even despite that I do not believe that either one of those could make a noise that loud unless it was right beside you. The noise sounded like it was right beside you, but you could tell it was off in the distance. After we all ran to the trucks and drove off until we found a place to pull over and talk about it. I first thought my friends were messing with us, but I quickly disproved that. Their pupils were still dilated, like adrenaline was still pumping in them, and that, plus how close we were, convinced me it wasn't them. After we went home, I looked at Google Maps to see there was no farmland within 5 miles of the trail, making me believe it was not a bull. We've gone back to the trail multiple times after that, but never before sunset. I'm still completely unsure of what it was, but I do know it's real because what are the chances of all of us hearing the same thing? A Pequodji came to visit. I live in Canada. The city where I live is a small city, but with a bit of driving, I can be in an isolated forest within an hour. I love being in the bush, as we call it. I feel a special connection to the trees and wildlife and try to be out there as often as I can. At the beginning of the COVID pandemic, like many others, I temporarily lost my job. This was a great opportunity for me to live my passion, exploring and enjoying the forests that surround me. Late one spring night, I think it was in March 2020, I decided to drive north and just get out there and enjoy the crisp early spring air. I packed a few things, and in a few minutes, I was on my way. I did not know where I was going. I often do this, just drive until I feel I am where I need to be and then stop there. I had been driving about an hour and decided that I had gone far enough. I pulled into the parking area of a hiking trail next to the highway. It was a beautiful night, with the stars blazing gloriously in the clear spring sky. I sat there quietly, lights and engine off, just enjoying the solitude. As I sat with the window open, looking and listening to the night, a lone snowflake quickly drifted from the front of my truck toward the rear, just under the driver's side mirror. I thought that was odd, because there were not any lights on in my vehicle, and the night was moonless. The darkness was very thick, and yet I could see that snowflake. It was self-illuminating somehow. I reasoned that it was somehow aglow by an unseen source of light. Very quickly, however, there were more of the dull gray snowflakes quickly following the same path as the first, and all were easily visible. I followed them with my eyes from the front to the back. and around the back and up the other side and then around the front again. They were circling my truck. I found the scene very unnerving, and my mind was racing trying to reason what could be happening. I followed the little gray flecks around the vehicle again and watched as they passed by my driver's side window, just under the mirror. By now there were maybe 20 or 30 of them, all illuminated in the same dull gray hue. They raced by, one and two at a time, until one of them took a steep dive under my mirror, then popped up right in front of my face just inches from my rolled down driver's side window. Except now it was not the harmless looking little snowflake I thought it was. It had taken shape, an almost human-like shape. Only a silhouette, the form had a head with what appeared to be radiating lines surrounding it, with shoulders and arms. The arms did not end in hands, instead, they ended in smoky wisps, as did the torso. There were no legs that I could see. The entire figure was colored in the same dull gray self-illuminating color. It floated there for a second or two, seemingly looking at me as I looked at it. I am not too macho to admit I was freaked out. I fumbled for the keys, rolled up the window as quickly as it would go, and then left that place like a rabbit with its tail on fire. I had never heard of a Pakwudgie before that night, and after doing some research, that is the closest thing I can attribute my sighting to. Saw something I still don't understand on a random island, 2016. I and my friends live in the Middle East, and we used to go out on the jet skis a lot. There are tons of small islands near the beach, and we just go explore them. Usually nothing's on them. Just sand, trees, maybe trash. One day we all split up to explore different spots and planned to meet back at the beach by 10 p.m. I found a random island that looked like it had trees, so I went for it. It wasn't big, but when I got closer I saw this small wooden house. It was old and broken down. Not like a fancy house, more like a box someone built to stay in. Some of the wood had already fallen into the ocean. The place just felt weird. I ignored the house at first and went toward the center of the island. That's when I saw something I still can't explain. There were these figures. The figures were entirely black, not just the color of skin. No face. No clothes. Just dark shapes standing in a circle. When I glanced at them, one of them slowly turned its body toward me. It was not just the head that turned toward me, but the entire body. I didn't wait. I ran straight back to my jet ski and took off as fast as I could. When I turned around to check, they were gone. The circle was empty. But when I looked at the house again, I swear one of them was standing in front of it. I returned to the beach much earlier than everyone else, around 5 p.m. I didn't say anything, but I also never explored alone again. Possible paranormal or cryptid encounter. My friend and I decided to explore some supposedly haunted woods connected to a skate park in our town. He's told me a couple stories about whatever's in there, in limited detail, but I've heard from several other accounts that some strange things go on there. One said friend got chased out of there by something he described to be a very tall humanoid with abnormally long arms. Another account from him and another friend of his has him and his friend walking down a trail. They hear something behind them, and when they turn around, there's a stone devil statue facing them that wasn't there before. The stories sound unbelievable, but given the earnestness with which they told them, I'm inclined to believe them to at least some extent. Maybe I'm naive, but whatever. Anyway, on to the actual story. It feels normal as we pull into the parking lot. About 5 minutes after we hit the trails, I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, as if something were watching us or at least aware of our presence. About 5 minutes after that the trail takes us to a small river. At a bend in the trail I saw a pair of bright glowing eyes before whatever was watching us hid behind some foliage. We got the duck out of there immediately. As we were leaving, my friend looked behind us and said, "It's following us, don't turn around." We made it back to the truck in one piece and got the duck out of there. I'm going to go back tomorrow and document what I find. Maybe record something if it's safe enough to do so. My friend thinks it's a skinwalker, but I'm not so sure, as we live in Oregon, and to my knowledge the Navajo tribe from which the stories originated never resided here. I'm dead set on going back there tomorrow morning. Hopefully I'll come back with more to go off of. I went back this morning at around noon. It was mostly uneventful, but I felt very on edge as soon as I reached the trial. Despite walking for about 45 minutes without incident, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. This time I managed to actually reach the river before I started hearing things. It sounded like there was a baby crying behind some large blackberry bushes on the other side of the river. Shortly after that, a large creature began moving along the path toward the other side of the river. That's when I decided to leave. About 15 minutes later I made it to the parking lot before I heard some kind of howl. It sounded similar to someone mimicking a wolf howl, but something sounded off about it. The actual park was completely devoid of activity, but it's possible that some group of teenagers was just ducking around. I don't know, though. I'm going to go back once it gets dark so I can find something more concrete. Wish me luck. We visited an abandoned insane asylum, but ultimately, we had to flee for our lives. This happened when I was 16. I'm 33 years old now. I didn't get my driver's license till I was 18, but my friend, let's call him Gary, got his. Now, we lived in a pretty small town in North Carolina. The type of town where all the high school kids, me included at the time, hung out in the Walmart parking lot because there was nothing better to do. So I and Gary had been friends since the beginning of high school. Met in one of our classes freshman year. Gary was into the spooky stuff, and so was I. Not long after getting his license, he comes to me with an idea. He tells me about some apparently old abandoned insane asylum a few towns over. He claims it's located in the woods and is no longer visible from the roads. He wants us to go out at night to see if it's haunted by the patients who died there. Of course no one wants to go with him but me. So, the following weekend, we decide we're going to sneak out and check out this place. It takes us a while to get there and figure out where exactly this place is. Finally, we find the place where we can park the car and follow the trail up to the asylum. We arrive at an old-ass building. We couldn't determine if it was a genuine asylum or merely a building. It was definitely old and had plants growing all over it. It's possible a sign for the place was somewhere hidden in the brush. We walk into the building. There was no door. The inside is covered in graffiti. All kinds of stuff. Some are kind of funny and others disturbing. The place definitely felt and looked spooky. We didn't end up staying long. We had been inside maybe 10 minutes or so, exploring the few rooms near the front of the building. Then a loud bang goes off. The sound didn't resemble a gunshot, but rather sounded like a massive object colliding with the ground. I and Gary freeze. We turn to look at the doorway of the room the noise came from at the end of the hallway. A wheelchair slowly rolled into view from the room. In this wheelchair is an old doll. If you know what a Raggedy Ann doll is, then picture that. Well, that was enough for me and Gary. We decided to just head back to the car. We're walking back to the car through the trail. We're both obviously scared, but neither of us wants to show it or admit it. As we're walking, we hear something move around in the woods. I and Gary don't speak a word to each other or even look at each other. We both immediately take off running. Whatever it was that we heard had started chasing us. We could hear it running in the woods next to us. Luckily we made it back to the car and took off. We didn't look back and never saw what was after us. For all we know, it was just some animal. Looking back at these events now, I'm not sure what's scarier. The fact that we possibly ran into a ghost/spirit or that maybe we weren't alone out there. Saw some really weird shit at an abandoned kids' tuberculosis hospital, and it still freaks me out. Hey guys, I never really believed in haunted stuff until this happened at this old abandoned children's tuberculosis hospital near my city. It's got a super sad history, lots of kids who were sick passed away there, and the place always felt off. One time, during a sunny day, keep in mind there is a lot of natural lighting in the building, my friend was with another friend, just exploring, filming a silly video inside, just lip syncing and messing around, and she didn't even notice at first, but later she saw this black shadowy humanoid figure walking behind her by a door. The crazy part? They were literally the only ones in the building at the time, and her friend was in front of her while she was filming herself. They always check for people before exploring, and there was no one else. No footsteps, no voices, nothing. Just that shadow. She only found out about it months later when she rewatched the video. After that, she said she'd never go back, and honestly, I don't blame her. I don't have the video, I'm not sure if she does, as we're not friends anymore, but seeing it with my own eyes was enough for me to believe something seriously wrong with that place. Has anyone else ever been somewhere with heavy history like that and caught something unexplainable? What do y'all think that shadow was? Historical account of a demon in the New World. This is a story that the Spanish explorer Alvar Núñez Cabeza de Vaca reported in his memoirs in the 16th century. These Indians and the ones we left behind told us a very strange tale. From their account it may have occurred 15 or 16 years ago. They said there wandered then about the country a man, whom they called Bad Thing, of small stature and with a beard, although they never could see his features clearly, and whenever he would approach their dwellings their hair would stand on end and they would begin to tremble. In the doorway of the lodge there would then appear a firebrand. That man thereupon came in and took hold of anyone he chose, and with a sharp knife of flint, as broad as a hand and 2 palms in length, he cut their side, and, thrusting his hand through the gash, took out the entrails, cutting off a piece 1 palm long, which he threw into the fire. Afterwards he made 3 cuts in one of the arms, The second one at the place where people are usually bled, and twisted the arm but reset it soon afterwards. Then he placed his hands on the wounds, and they told us that they closed at once. Many times he appeared among them while they were dancing, sometimes in the dress of a woman and again as a man, and whenever he took a notion to do it, he would seize the hut or lodge, take it up into the air, and come down with it again with a great crash. They also told us how, many a time, they set food before him, but he never would partake of it, and when they asked him where he came from and where he had his home, he pointed to a rent in the earth and said his house was down below. We laughed very much at those stories, making fun of them, and then, seeing our incredulity, they brought to us many of those whom, they said, he had taken, and we saw the scars of his slashes in the places and as they told. We told them he was a demon and explained that if they believed in God and became Christians like us, they wouldn't have to fear him, and he wouldn't dare to come back as long as we were in this country. At this they were greatly pleased and lost much of their apprehension. I'm pretty sure I met a ghost at Poinsett Bridge. I was in college when I and my friends took a trip down to Poinsett Bridge, a 201-year-old cobblestone bridge built to connect Asheville, North Carolina, and Greenville, South Carolina, said to be haunted. We went at around 8 to 8:30 p.m., and the sun was down. It was very dark, and one of the friends in the group believes in the paranormal. I don't really believe anything about ghosts or spiritual things, but it was interesting. We went down to the small stream that runs under the bridge. I was the only one who truly didn't care and decided to sit under the bridge. I told my friends to turn off their flashlights, and after some convincing, they did. I sat there and breathed for a bit. It was calming. I was doing this mainly to prove that there was nothing there. After a while, I got up and asked for a couple photos. After they did, I started walking towards them but ate absolute shit on the rocks. I fell pretty slowly, but I couldn't prevent falling. It felt like something was forcing me down. We started heading back up to the car, but I veered left away from the group. I decided to explore for a quick second down a trail. It was like 15 feet down the trail when I swore I saw a shadowy figure looking at me. I don't know if my flashlight was reflecting or if it was just my brain playing tricks, but I swore I saw something. I sprinted as fast as possible back to the group, and we left. After we got back to the house, my friend was looking through the photos when she showed me something that appeared in most of the photos she took of me. A tall shadowy outline of a figure wearing a cloak, holding a cane, with a top hat. This could have, again, been pareidolia, but I found it interesting. Anyways, that's the only time I've ever thought I've seen a ghost. Luther, Oklahoma, is single-handedly the scariest ducking place I've ever been in my life. Late at night, trying to get home from a cross-country road trip, we were running on fumes and had to stop for gas and to use the bathroom and had no other option than there. I pulled up to a gas station/restaurant that my GPS says is the only gas station for miles and miles, can probably be found pretty easily on Google Maps, and there were cars parked everywhere there. We are in the middle of nowhere. Cornfields and shit. This town is not large, and the number of cars in the lot would have damn near added up to the population of the town. I thought the restaurant must be busy, but when I got out of the truck, it was just utter silence. I walk across this dark parking lot and end up making it into the gas station. I ask the guy behind the counter where the bathroom is. He doesn't say a word and points through a corridor in the very back of the store that connects you to the restaurant. One would assume this would be just an employee/storage area at first glance. I make my way through it and into this huge restaurant that is completely empty. There are no tables, chairs, or people in sight. Just darkness. I have no idea where in the duck I am supposed to go. As I walk deeper into the restaurant, I look to my right down another hallway, and there are two faces illuminated by computer screens in the dark. I decide to ask these people where in the hell the bathroom is, and when I do, they give me absolutely no response. They just stare at me. Alarm bells have been ringing in my head since I pulled into the parking lot, but now my fight or flight is telling me to get the duck out of there as fast as possible. Seconds feel like eternity as I make my way out of this dark, unfamiliar maze of a building. I find the corridor back into the gas station. The man behind the counter is gone. Once more, I found myself fueled by exhaustion. I begrudgingly pumped gas as fast as I could with my head on a swivel, still in an unexplainable panic, got back in the truck, and got the duck out of there. I don't know what was going on in that place, or if I just had myself a mental moment, but I've never in my entire life before or since felt that kind of instantaneous fear. The shit of it is, a few miles up the winding road right next to the on-ramp I needed to take to get back on the highway was a brand new gas station, not yet appearing on the GPS, with all the lighting in the ducking world. I put myself into a goddamned horror movie script for nothing. A bright green orb. In 2000, my brother, my uncle, my aunt, a cousin, and my brother's ex-wife and I were into ghost hunting. On a particular evening, possibly in June, they decided to visit Stepp Cemetery. This is an old cemetery near where I live, but not close enough for details, but I'm leaving the name here in case others want to check it out. They had read this story of the lady in black and how her spirit would visit the grave of her son, who was stillborn. It was said that she would frequent the gravesite and would sit on a stump next to his grave. Some claims say that she is seen reading by the grave. This particular night was a still night until they arrived at the cemetery. That was until the wind started blowing approximately 5 to 10 miles per hour with an eerie full moon and partly cloudy sky. None of them had seen anything or had the courage to sit on the stump. Supposedly, whoever sat on it would die within a year. After a few minutes, they all decided to leave and considered Stepp Cemetery to be a hoax. On their way to their cars, someone stated whoever was in the back of the group had a bright flashlight. My brother turned to look and see who it was, only to see a green orb following them out of the cemetery. My brother had said, "It was a feeling I have only had one other time in my life, and I didn't like it then." They all saw the bright green light and then quickly walked back to their cars. The orb of light followed them, only stopping approximately 50 feet from the entrance and then disappearing. He said he never knew, to this day, if that green orb was a form of the lady in black or if it was a different spirit. That was almost 18 years ago, and he can still see that night clearly in his mind. The lady in black is a story that revolves around a grave and a stump. Some stories say it is the location of her stillborn child, while others say it is the grave of a trucker. She is said to watch over her loved one. The cemetery is located in Bloomington, Indiana, off of Old State Highway 37 in the Morgan-Monroe State Forest. I saw Satan himself. That's right, I saw the devil himself in person. This happened a couple weeks ago down the street from my house. The street is very narrow, and it's pretty dark at night because there are no streetlights since it's a small village with only 1,000 people. The village, which is quite old, is situated on the Dalmatian coast in Croatia. There are a couple graves from 1400, so I guess that is how old it is. Many paranormal things happen to me and my friends, but I guess this is not related to those events. One night I was coming from a late night drive. I admit I was a bit high, but I was focused and I was conscious. Locked my car and started walking towards the house, which was approximately around 100 meters from the parking lot. I walked into the street, dark and cold, with a little bit of wind but nothing too much, typical weather. Old stone houses, some still occupied, surround the street. As I'm walking, I feel a sudden urge to piss. I knew I couldn't make it to my restroom, so I picked a small alley on the left and started pissing, and I noticed that something smelled awful and rotten. As I was looking up, I saw a crack in the old olive door. I had nothing to contemplate until I positioned myself at eye level through the opening, only to be met with the sight of yellow eyes and pointed teeth staring at me. I was standing face to face next to Satan, and she is damn ugly and old, just how you would imagine it. It took time to notice that it was not a normal human. Matter of fact, I said, "Excuse me, I'm sorry," as I thought that it was some random grandma or grandpa, but then it smiled, and suddenly the door started banging itself to almost open. The doors were sealed shut with a plank because no one lived there and it was abandoned. I have never in my life experienced a sensation as dangerous and demonic as this one. I suddenly fell back. I was praying the whole time, and I was never so scared, but when I said repeatedly, "Lucifer, leave me in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit," I felt safe and brave. It is strange that I have only attended church services during Christmas and similar holidays when the entire family gathers. And I have never heard or read such words from anywhere, yet I said them with such confidence as if God told me what to say. The day after, I went exploring to see if I was tripping or if I saw it for real, and boy, was I right. The owners of the property were present, and the doors had been smashed into the wall across the street to the extent that they were beyond repair. It looked like something launched them, so I asked the owners what happened. I didn't tell them anything, and in the meantime I was looking to see if I could have seen a piece of light or maybe a reflection of light, but nothing. The room was sealed and dark. When I came home, my grandma randomly gave me a prayer rosary, and she said that I should keep it. She didn't know anything about the earlier night, and it kind of freaked me out. I took it as a sign from God that I needed to change my life around. I stopped smoking and gambling, quit bad habits, and started focusing on my future and religion. And since then my life has changed for the better. I have never seen or experienced anything paranormal since then. Haunted tunnel. Note, I don't know if the locals are hiding something from tourists or if the story is true. So the story begins here. A famous, haunted tunnel is in the northern mountain range of my country. One day a couple was traveling to the mountains, unaware of anything about this tunnel and of the myths/stories of the surrounding area. Suddenly when they reached the tunnel, their car stopped, and it was dead dark outside. The wife started getting fearful of the dark in the area, but the husband reassured her and told her to stay calm as he went walking to search for help. He went out of sight of his wife after some distance. Some time later the wife, who was sitting in the car waiting for her husband, started hearing a thumping sound. She started panicking, and the noise was coming from the roof of the car, like somebody was banging on it. Somehow she managed to get the cell phone signals and immediately called the nearest police station. The police officer told her to stay inside the car and lock herself inside. Like they were aware of the haunting stories of the tunnel. The thumping was constant and loud. When a group of policemen arrived at the spot, they stopped their patrol car a little far away and called the lady. The lady asked them if they had seen her husband on the way, as he went in the same direction they were coming from. The policeman did not answer her question and asked her to step out of the car quickly and come straight towards them without looking back. When the lady stepped out and started running towards them, she, out of curiosity, looked back to see where the thumping sound was coming from. What she saw was a black entity with a terrifying face and a knife in its hand stabbing the husband on and on. After this encounter, she lost her senses and was declared mental. When a local guide told this story to me, I was convinced enough not to go through that tunnel at night. What do you think? Can this be true, or are the locals hiding something? Any thoughts are welcome. East Fork event. I had an unsettling experience while camping on the east side of East Fork State Park in Bethel, Ohio. I've been there a few times, but this was my first trip in the fall. I wanted to enjoy the cooler weather and the changing leaves, but what happened has left me questioning whether I'll go back. I arrived late in the afternoon on October 19th, set up my tent near the tree line, and decided to explore a nearby trail. The east side of the park is quiet and less traveled, which I thought would be ideal. As soon as I started walking, something felt off. The trail was more overgrown than I remembered, and the air felt heavy. Not humid, but oppressive, like the atmosphere itself was thicker. After about 10 minutes, I smelled something strange. It wasn't faint, it was unmistakable and pungent, burning hair. It hit me out of nowhere, sharp and acrid, like it was carried on the wind. I stopped to look around, expecting to see a fire or something, but there was nothing. The smell lingered for a minute or two and then faded. I kept going, trying to shake the unease. Then I heard it, screams. Multiple animals were screaming, not just one. They were distant and distorted, but it didn't sound like anything I'd heard in the woods before. It wasn't the usual wildlife sounds, it was chaotic, almost frantic. Some of the screams even had this strange, almost human-like tone to them. I decided I'd had enough exploring for the evening. As I made my way back to camp, the burning hair smell returned. This time, the smell was so potent that it caused my eyes to water, and I felt as though it was clinging to me. When I got to my tent, I noticed something strange. The zipper was slightly open. I always make sure it's zipped up completely, so that immediately put me on edge. I stood there for a moment, shining my flashlight around, but I couldn't see anyone or anything nearby. I looked inside the tent, and everything was exactly as I'd left it. The smell, however, was even worse inside. It was suffocating, like it was coming from the tent itself, even though there was no visible source. That was enough for me. I packed up my gear as fast as I could and threw everything into the back of my car. I left without looking back and didn't stop driving until I was far from the park. I can't stop thinking about what happened. Has anyone else experienced anything strange in East Fork State Park, especially on the east side? This was October 2024, and I've been trying to rationalize it, but nothing adds up. I would greatly appreciate your insights on this matter. A few odd experiences. Over the years I've had several odd encounters. I don't know if they are necessarily ghosts. The first was when I was 16 or so. I was asleep, and I had a dream that I was watching myself from above my body. This is the only time I have ever had a dream like this. I watched as something, or someone, came in through my bedroom window. It had been closed and locked before I went to bed. I am positive I locked it, as a few months prior I'd learned the window top would shimmy down if it wasn't locked and wasps built nests in the crack, as it was cold outside. I watched the figure, shadowy but shaped like a man, watch me for a few moments and then turn to my desk. It seemed to hear or sense something that startled it, and it knocked a china figurine I had on the desk to the floor, smashing it. When I woke up, the window was open and the figurine was smashed on the floor. The second is the longest story and the scariest. I was exploring the land behind a local wooded park with some friends. We found a clearing, if you could call it that. It had some brush and trees in it, but everything was dead. There were 7 trees, 5 still standing, that looked as though they had never had branches. The other 2 had fallen and looked like they had rotted out from the inside. These were tall trees, easily 4 to 5 times my height, and looked broken off at the top, although the tops were nowhere to be found. After a few minutes here I felt something overwhelmingly telling me to leave. I have never felt so scared in my entire life. It felt like something was pressing in on me from all sides. I managed to let my friends know this. It was hard to speak. As we left, we all felt something chasing us. We all heard different things. One of us heard footsteps behind us. One person heard screaming. I felt breath on my neck. The scariest, though, was the girl I was running behind. As I was behind her, I know there was no time for anyone to do this to her or for her to have done this to herself. On her back, there appeared scratches, like someone ran their fingernail over her skin too hard, causing it to welt in red lines, but not draw blood. It drew a very clear picture across her back. When we made it back to the cars, we felt it leave, but I felt something pulling me, like it was trying to take me out of my body. Since then, whenever I am within a couple miles of that area, I feel something watching me. I later learned that several people have hung themselves in that park, although not near that clearing. I have since then only been in contact with one of the people I was with, but he remembers it just as clearly as I do. The third is less creepy. I was leaving for work one day and felt a hand on my shoulder, pressing down hard enough to make me stop. I was completely alone, and I heard in sort of a mental whisper that I should wait. I left 10 minutes later. On my way into work that day I saw no fewer than 4 potentially fatal car accidents. I believe the last one was my grandfather, warning me. The other 2, I have no idea whether they were ghosts or something else. 5 years ago, I was at my friend's birthday, and we wanted to explore abandoned houses. My friend turned 13 that day, I was 14, and most of the people there were 13, so I and one other guy, 15, were the oldest there. One of them suggested going to explore an abandoned house that was nearby, and I agreed because we were bored. That guy, let's call him James, and one of the other girls brought flashlights. I was supposed to film the whole thing, and the others just dressed up and got out of the house. There were 8 of us, but we met 2 more guys on the way there. So, we got near it, and 2 girls, let's call them Clay and Emma, said to me that they want to film the whole thing because they had an iPhone 10 at the time, and I had a kind of old Android. I knew my phone was bad and the camera was worse, but that's not the point. So, we got in. It was a medium house. James and the other 2 guys were joking around with Clay and Emma, the birthday girl, I will call her Luna, and I was talking about anime, and the other people were talking about an exam that was close. We were halfway in the house, and it was dark AF when we heard barking. Emma and one girl, I will call her Sarah, screamed, but the one guy that we met on the way, Kazu, his nickname because he likes Kazutora from Tokyo Revengers, told them it was just a dog. Not even a minute later, we heard that dog again, but in his voice, it was suffering, like someone was torturing that dog. We were just standing there, like a group of idiots. Probably a minute later, James said that we should go home, but Luna and Clay, and, TBH, me, were interested, so we wanted to go explore, but we heard a loud scream, so we ran out, and we ran 100 kilometers per hour to the house. A few days later, I got back to Luna's home. We had to do the presentation, so we tried to go back to that house, and guess what we saw? If you thought of a dead dog and a pentagram, you would be right. We quickly left the house and never discussed what we saw again. And, sorry for not finding a video, Clay and Emma both deleted it. Why, we are all still angry at them. I and 2 friends got chased out of an abandoned house by a floating, screaming, transparent woman 16 years ago, but I remember it just like it was yesterday. At that time, I was relatively new to the paranormal and had just begun experiencing unusual events, but later I worked at a haunted county museum that was once known as the Poorhouse. I and my parents lived in a mobile home park. Behind the property was an abandoned house and barn surrounded by trees. One time, 2 friends and I decided to check it out during the day. Nothing happened that day or the next night, but we did lose the flashlight the night before the incident happened. The day of the incident we went to retrieve the flashlight, and again nothing happened, but I got this odd feeling like, hey, you should leave because there's something here that was disturbed. The night of the incident, as we were walking to the house, I got that same feeling, and unbeknownst to me, the older friend had the same feeling, but neither of us said anything. We get to the house and walk through it, and reach the porch. The porch was blocked by trees, which means it had sat for some time. How long it was sitting there abandoned wasn't known and still isn't. The reason we were originally exploring it was because we heard rumors going around the mobile home park that it was supposedly haunted, so we wanted to check it out. While we were standing on the porch, we heard a scratching sound coming from the upstairs portion of the house, so we decided to investigate and see if it was just an animal. the oldest of the friend group, and I checked one bedroom while the other friend checked the other. We didn't find anything, so we decided to call it a night and leave. Going down the stairs was the oldest friend, then me and the other friend in that order. We get maybe halfway down the stairs when the friend behind me starts yelling to move. I turn around, thinking maybe an animal or something came out of one of the rooms. But instead I see this transparent, floating woman who's screaming. Apparently the oldest friend had turned around too and seen the entity and was starting to freak out too. We originally ran towards the porch but realized that we couldn't leave that way, so we went back through the house. The entity is standing/floating at the bottom of the stairs and still screaming at us. We found the exit and ran all the way back home, which was a good quarter mile or less back up the road. We actually had run all the way through the mobile home park until we got to my home. We sat in silence for a good 5 minutes until I had asked the other two what they saw. We all three described the same woman/entity. We never returned, and no one was active, so the entity may have been attached to the abandoned house. I don't remember many details about her face, but I remember her floating, screaming, and wearing a red dress, and we could see right through her. That was one of the most intense encounters I've had since I was 15 and something I won't ever forget. I still don't know what she was, if she was just a restless spirit we unknowingly disturbed or something much worse, like a demonic entity. Haunted RAF hospital? So, just to add some context, I and 3 friends decided to do some exploring at an abandoned RAF hospital in the UK. Nothing too particularly exciting about it, no stories with haunting history, etc. The whole site is one story with long corridors and straight lines going off everywhere. There's a morgue, surgery, and other not so nice parts to it. We take a walk around to each different area. The whole site probably encompasses no more than an acre or 2. We spend no more than half an hour camping in different parts of the site, generally enjoying a relaxing time while not discovering much beyond bird nests and empty McDonald's cups left by previous visitors. The whole atmosphere, however, suddenly changed as we entered the corridor leading to the morgue. I assure you that, although this may sound fictional, every word I say is true. 2 of my friends were walking towards the morgue ahead of me and another friend by about 10 to 15 meters. The 2 of us were walking slowly, trying to dodge debris whilst passing the occasional glance to each other, talking about something, and then we hear this hello. At that moment, I realized it was a groan, which immediately sent a chill down my spine. It was completely out of the blue, and we weren't expecting it. Both of us did the whole "please tell me that was you" charade, but it was neither of us. Add to the fact we were looking at each other as we just finished speaking ourselves, and as daft as it sounds, neither one of us could have said that without the other seeing. We soon booked it and told our other 2 friends ahead of us. There was no one else on site, it was the middle of the night, and we left shortly after, not wanting to figure out what said hello to us. So yeah, that's me. Cheers. My ghost story is from when my ex and I explored a graveyard. Back when I was still in high school, I think it was during my junior year, I was dating this girl who was a year or 2 below me. We'll call her May. We had been dating for about 2 months or so, and we were both into the paranormal and the unexplained. So one night May and I decided to go out to the graveyard down the road from her house. She used to live in one of those apartment complexes that were side by side, with 2 connecting apartments for each building. So you could basically go outside and take a piss, and the neighbors could probably see you if they looked out their side windows. It was also in the ghetto area of my hometown. So you probably wouldn't want to take a piss outside, especially at night, anyways lol. It was about 6 p.m., so right before the sunset, and May and I had decided to start at the opposite end of the graveyard, and we would work our way back to the side that was closest to her house. Her house wasn't right next to it or anything, it was actually a couple blocks down the road. But we're in the graveyard reading the headstones and exploring the plots and all that. I think we were somewhere around 45 minutes into our exploration and had decided to look at one last spot. It was the corner closest to the exit, which was closest to her house. The plot was quite fancy, featuring cream-colored headstones and a flagpole in the center, with the American flag flying at the top. It might have been a veteran burial ground or something, but nonetheless May and I checked it out for a minute or so and decided to leave towards the gate, which was about 30 yards from the plot we came from to the left. I turned around to have one last look as we were walking and holding hands, because something was grabbing my attention in the area from the moment I saw the plot, plus I thought it was cool looking. I stopped dead in my tracks. My eyes got so big, and I jumped out of my skin and squeezed May's hand. I saw what looked like an actual ghost that you see in movies like Ghostbusters or The Frighteners with a blue aura around it. It almost looked like an angel or something, but I didn't have my glasses on, so I didn't really get to see many details. All I knew was that it looked humanoid and was floating above one of the graves, just staring at us. May noticed that I was looking at something, and she definitely felt the tension on her hand as I was squeezing it, so she asked me what was wrong. I then asked her, "What the hell is that?" She turned to look, and she squeezed my hand even harder. I hadn't taken my gaze off of the thing, and I had blinked a couple times to make sure I wasn't just seeing things. I indeed was not, because now she saw it too. The thing then launched right at us, and my heart leapt out of my chest. May then turned around and pulled me towards the gate, which we were a few yards away from. When she pulled me, she had sort of jerked me out of my trance, and I turned my head forward so as not to trip on something and bust my ass. We booked it out of there, but I took another look behind us before we jumped over the gate, and the thing was about where we were standing before we started running. I turned back to May, and we ran as fast as I can remember running in my life. Lol. There was a road right outside the gate, and in order to get back to her house, we had to pass by that plot on our side of the fence because that's the direction we had to go. As we passed, I took one last look and saw nothing. We made it back and didn't really have anything happen to us after that. I haven't seen anything like that since. One of the scariest moments of my life. I think about it at least 3 times a week. What tried to kill me that night? I'm a female, and this story happened just a year ago on the day I'm sharing this. For reference, I would be 15 at this time and deep into the paranormal. I am a medium and have always seen spirits from a young age, and I believe I was given this ability when I was about 3. I died for a couple minutes and was brought back. I was very sick as a child, and the doctors couldn't figure out why. Ever since then, my parents remember me talking about kids or adults that aren't ever there and believed it was my imagination, but as I got older and kept seeing them, I knew it was just my head. I know many people don't believe in mediums, but I swear I see the people who aren't really there. The night before this story, I had a dream of an older woman coming in and telling me to wake up many, many times. I did used to get sleep paralysis. I believed it was that until she told me to wake up as the gas was still on. The event caused me to wake up in a panic and go into the kitchen to find not one but all of our gas stoves on. The incident was the first time I had seen her and hasn't been the last. I think of her as my guardian. The next day, I and my friends were going to explore an abandoned tax building. As we were all big fans of Sam and Colby, we wanted to see what all the fun was about, and now deep down I regret every decision made that day. As we were going, we were planning on staying all day, so we packed food, water, chargers, flashlights, everything you would need, basically, and our parents thought we were sleeping at a different friend's house. They always covered for us, as we were going to hopefully stay the night. As we made our way towards the building, my friends were searching the history on it, and we soon found out it was forced to close due to one guy ending his coworker. Not only did he end one, but 4 others, 5 total. We all became frightened, but we didn't want to back out, knowing that the only risk we faced was encountering squatters. As we entered the building, I felt as if the air in my lungs was being squeezed out of me while everyone else was fine. It was almost as if whatever was there knew that I was the only one who could sense them and see them. As we explored for, like, an hour or so, we heard the usual building noises until I heard a scream. Think of a bloody murder scream from a woman. I asked my 2 male friends if they heard it, but they hadn't, so we kept exploring. After being there for about 3 hours, I decided to wander off alone, knowing I had seen a ghostly figure of a woman and seen her enter a room. As I went into the one room alone, that's when I saw something move. I assumed it was the woman at the time. The next thing I saw was blood on the walls and floor. It was dry in some places and wet in others. This confused me, as the murders were years ago, meaning something else happened here. As I stood up, I saw the thing move again. I called out to the entity, stating that I could see it and was willing to talk. The next thing I knew, I felt like I was being choked by a wall, but there was nothing there. Soon, my friends came running in and saw this, and they all started screaming. We decided to leave, but before we left, I saw a little boy and went over to speak to him, thinking he was an actual child. My friends were confused and called out to me, but I continued speaking to the little boy. He said my presence being there had angered him. I was confused about who him was and why I was unable to see him, but I could see the others that hunted this place. We decided it was unsafe to stay, as I explained everything that had happened. The same night we ended up really sleeping over at her house, and that night I felt as if something attached itself to me. The night I didn't sleep and only woke up to a mirror and bruises in the shape of handprints on my neck. I searched online for how the man ended the woman, and it was from none other than strangulation. It's not who did I see, it's what did I see. Ever since that night, I have experienced more paranormal occurrences, and I am always willing to share those stories. However, I believe that whatever was present wanted me dead because it knew I could sense its presence while others could not, fearing that I would reveal the truth of what really happened that day. I hope you enjoyed this, and I know something is attached to me now, as I have spoken to it, and it is unable to leave me alone. Thank you so much for listening, and I have much more to talk about. Thank you. Kayla. Years later, we still have no idea what this was. I'm curious to know if anyone else has experienced something similar to this because it's driving me crazy. Around 9 to 10 years ago, my friends and I all experienced and witnessed the same exact thing in a campground area we used to go to annually, Pio Pico campgrounds in SoCal. I was around 15/16 at the time and was with my younger brother and a group of 3 to 5 other kids. We decided to explore the area and hiked up a rocky hill that was technically a restricted area, where we reached a peak about 100 to 150 feet above the campground. We were surrounded by nothing but dry California hills with a great overhead view of the campsite. Shortly, we all witnessed the most bizarre thing that boggles my mind to this day. It looked like a floating/flying person wearing an all-black morph suit. Hands, arms, legs, and a head were all visible. It floated about 20 feet above us, moving east and slowly up into the sky. I remember us all yelling at it and chasing it just for it to vanish into the atmosphere. Obviously, we were all freaking out and in shock by what we saw. We all sprinted down the hill to tell our parents, but they thought we were just being exaggerative and just playing around. At the time, none of us had iPhones or anything to film on us, except my little brother had recorded a video of it on his phone, which suddenly and inexplicably found itself in the campground pool. How convenient, lol. Just today I texted my brother asking if he remembered this whole event or if I was crazy and my child brain fabricated a whole memory and I've convinced myself of seeing something that wasn't there. But he confirmed that he definitely remembers, and it looked just like a man in a black morph suit. Really hoping someone has any kind of similar experience. I had a friend who was into urban exploring, definitely not legal, but they would often take photos and collect miscellaneous abandoned items for archival projects. I tagged along on a few more extensive expeditions. The one that stuck with me was the Belchertown State School in Belchertown, Massachusetts. We went in the dead of winter, and after shoveling snow out of the way and prying open an old metal door, we found ourselves in the foyer/auditorium area of the school. The auditorium was a few steps down from where we were standing. It had flooded and completely frozen over with ice. Beneath it you could see rows and rows of desks. Across from us was a stage, the curtain still drawn. You had the feeling that someone was going to walk on stage at any moment. I can't explain what I felt there. It was eerie, but also sad. I felt intrusive and watched. I'm not a spiritual person, but I am a little superstitious. I always tried to treat the places we explored with deference and respect. I personally believe that any presence there deserved to remain unaltered. We took a few short videos and pictures, said, "Thank you," and promptly left. Does anyone know where this place might be or have a similar experience? It was the most terrifying sight I've ever encountered. I have a memory of being in the car late at night with my husband, driving cross-country and looking for a spot to camp late at night. It was maybe 5 years ago. We were somewhere between Missouri and California, coming from North Carolina and having gone through Overland Park, Kansas, and Ogden, Utah, that afternoon, somewhere where there was a vast amount of flat, dry land with desert brush. Pulling off the highway and down an unmarked dirt road that seemed to go on for at least 2 to 3 miles, we came to a parking lot on our right, and some feet ahead there was a fence marked "No Trespassing" and a sign that said "Space Observation" and showed a military logo. I don't remember which part of the military it showed, but I remember thinking it was strange to see it partnered with Space Observation, perhaps the Army or Navy? Despite my fear of getting in trouble or worse, my husband drove into the relatively small and elongated parking lot. My husband pulled to the left end of the parking lot and stopped the car. There was a fenced-off entrance with a path that looked a bit like train tracks leading past another fence and up a small slope where a small, single-story building was sitting next to a huge rocket. At the end of the parking lot directly opposite of us, a black car with shaded windows was sitting. When we pulled in, I didn't notice anyone, but after arguing about leaving with my husband for a second, I saw a man suddenly sitting in the back driver's side of the vehicle. The front door on the same side was slightly ajar, with no one else in the car. The back door was wide open, and the guy was sitting and staring forward before he met eyes with me. He was only about 15 to 20 feet away from us. His skin seemed a strange pink color in the street lamp glow, his cheeks were very angular and higher up than most people I've seen, and his eyes were darker and a lot larger than any humans, but not so large that you would notice if you quickly glanced past them in a crowd. When he looked at me, my whole body felt like it was struck by lightning. My heartbeat sped, my eyes watered, and I began hyperventilating and scrambling and ranting at my husband to get the F out of here, now. My husband saw the car, but not the man right in front of us. He shrugged me off and proposed, seriously, that we explore. He liked to explore places that seem a little scary, as did I, but he was a conspiracy theorist with a deep distrust, a deep hate, even, of the military and government. The fact he proposed this was maybe not so out of character if there wasn't a literal person right there, but this situation meant that proposal was wildly out of character for him. I have a military family and pride myself on being a skeptic who likes to put facts where my mouth is, so, you'd think my spouse would see my reaction as a huge reason to leave, as it was also out of character for me. My husband seemed to not see the man, though he was sitting directly across from us, and he tried to lightheartedly argue his case for why we should check the facility out. He began to try and get out of the car, and I grabbed him hard and began to hysterically cry and beg to leave. He laughed at how ridiculous he thought I was being. Aside from the other car and rocket, the place seemed like it was almost abandoned. Eventually he had no choice but to relent and began pulling out at what I painstakingly remember as an incredibly slow speed. As we were turning onto the dirt road, the man got out of the vehicle and stood up, keeping his eyes locked with mine almost the entire event. I remember he was wearing a white t-shirt and what looked like cargo shorts, but my memory could be slightly off by now. I've tried to forget about this and have tried to come up with reasons this was less than I thought it was, but recently a friend was spouting some conspiracy hogwash that reminded me of this story. Pushing it out of my head for so long, I'm struggling to find the area we were at, turning up no good results searching bases belonging to the military tasked with space observation or research. I can't find the long road with the fence and the parking lot with the track-like path and a rocket next to a small facility. I've considered it's a secret base, but I've run out of ideas to figure out where to find names of secret bases in the area. I want to find the area so I can see if anyone else had this or a similar experience in the same place. The scariest, most rationality-defying experience I've ever had. I still get chills and butterflies when I think about it. This was only about a week ago, and I was with my best friend, basically my sister. I live with her and my family, and our mutual friend. We were in the hunting blind, no one else was outside with us. Something grabbed her hand when she put it out of the tent as a joke, but I just reassured her that it was a bug or she touched something. At the time I thought something had just simply touched her hand. It was at night, I'm not sure what time, but it was likely around 11 p.m. or midnight. We had been hearing things all night while we were out there, but none of us said anything until we all heard a male voice. I heard Dad, my sister heard our friend, we're going to call him Sean, and I'm pretty sure he just heard a random guy's voice. I yelled out, assuming it was Dad. I said, "We can hear you." It got silent for a few minutes, we all sat staring at each other, and I insisted it was just Dad messing with us, but it went on for too long until we heard whispering. My sister started crying because she was looking directly at Sean. We could both see that we weren't talking at all. He clearly heard it too. We packed up all of our things in the hunting blind and went inside. For some context, the tents were on the porch, so we got inside pretty fast. I'm small for a guy, so we just made Sean go first. Although, what really made us decide to not just brush it off was the porch light turning on without actually seeing anyone out there. That light isn't very sensitive and is very difficult to turn on. We have had to do jumping jacks to get this light to turn on. So we just went inside since that isn't something that happens a lot. The activity has been more consistent lately, and we don't plan on pushing it. One of my many paranormal experiences. I was around 17, and I and two of my friends wanted to go to this psychiatric center that had shut down in the 90s. Most of our friends had gone, and it was a nice day in June, so we decided to head out and explore. None of us had gone, so we had tried to get our friend, who had been there a few times, to come along with us, but he said he couldn't go but to call him when we got there so that he could tell us how to get up to the roof. So we get there, and we have to park a little bit down the road because you can't have your car parked there because security will see it and know we are in there. So we come walking up, and we are pretty excited to get in there and see what everyone has been talking about. As we come walking up, we see two other girls around our age walking around the outside of the building, so we ask them the easiest way to get in. They tell us to go through the window next to the graffiti, and we would be on the first floor. We end up going through the window and come into the main area where I guess the reception for the hospital was. Now we still don't know exactly where to go, so we just start to go into every room, open all the doors, and basically check every nook and cranny possible. After, I'd say, 20 minutes exploring the first floor, we finally get to the end of the hallway, and at the very end are these two heavy metal doors. We go up to it, and we are trying to see through the dirty window on the thing's doors when my friend goes, "Oh shit, it's the crematorium." Now, just hearing those words gave me shivers just because of the thought of all those dead bodies that must have been cremated in there. But of course, being a 17-year-old, I couldn't be a pussycat and not go in with them. So we go in, and it's just an empty room with the racks where I'm assuming they put the bodies and then pushed them into the back part, which was the oven, I'm assuming. So as we are standing there, my one friend goes, "Dude, you should totally lie down on the rack, and we'll push you in." I immediately said, "Duck that," and he goes, "Fine, I'll do it," so he lies down on it and we push him in. Of course, being jerks, we book it out of the room, lying in that rack. He starts freaking the duck out, and he can't open it to get out, so we get back in there and let him out. Now we go to the second floor and do the exact same thing on the first floor. Checked out every room, every closet. So now it's almost been an hour since we were there, and we decide we want to get to the roof. So we see these stairs to our left at the end of the second floor hallway. So instead of calling our friend, we are like stairs equals upper floor equals roof. So we get to it, and we go to walk up the stairwell, and we come to a dead end. Like it went up but like right into a wall. So we were like, "Duck, we have to call our friend, and he has to tell us where to go." As we start to go down the stairs to the door we just came from, not even 2 minutes ago. We hear a door slam from the second floor, where we had just come from. We figure, oh, it might be those girls. As we reach the door to open it to the hallway, we hear all the doors start to slam shut. It was like someone was running towards us, slamming the doors as they went. But the hallway was wide, and there was no way one person was running down the hall doing that. Now at the end of the hallway is a dead end and the staircase where I and my two friends are now stuck. As we are standing there fully shitting our pants, the doors keep slamming, and as it comes right up to our door, it just stops. No footsteps, no slamming, nothing. Complete and utter silence. Now that is impossible because there had to be footsteps. Someone had to be running and doing that, right? There was not a single person out there. There would have been footsteps, especially because of how hard they would have had to be running to slam all those doors so quickly. We were absolutely ducking terrified and sat in that stairwell for, like, 20 minutes just waiting for someone to bust through. Finally, we said, "Duck it," and ran out of there and called our friend to figure out how to get to the roof. After that it was pretty normal. We got to the roof, saw that awesome view, and went and got some food after. But that was one of the scarier things that has happened to me. Explored a creepy part of my school. So today I and a few of my friends wandered around in the old pre-K building. Nothing super exciting happened, but we did see something peek around the corner in a bathroom, and we heard noises. What really freaked me out was that one of my friends kept saying he was feeling energy around him and in certain areas. He's not one to believe in this kind of stuff. We were in the kitchen when he said he felt the presence of two spirits, one to the right and a heavier one next to the door. Then one of my other friends jumped back and said someone whispered help in their ear. Then my friend said the energies were gone. That was freaky. After a while we all went home, and my friend who was feeling energetic said he thinks something followed him home. He said he felt like someone was watching him and that when he was alone in his room, he heard someone whispering. He also said while we were wandering the halls, he felt a bunch of energy behind him. He volunteered to be in the back of the group. He said it felt like they were watching us. We did know that this place was haunted in advance, so we were fully aware of that. We had heard stories about some of the ghosts. We have some classes in the building that's connected to the pre-K as well. We all agreed to go in there because we wanted to experience the supernatural. I also believe that my friend may be sensitive, as he frequently mentioned feeling pressure in specific areas, emotions, and energies. My paranormal experience in an abandoned place. This location was an abandoned place at my house. This took place around June 6 to 7 of this year. This abandoned building just so happens to be a psych ward. I never wanted to explore this alone, so I waited until my friends were going to come with me, which took about 2 months of convincing. We rode our bikes at this abandoned building. Before we hopped the fence, the most intense moment happened when this random guy asked, "Hey, what are you doing here?" My friends and I stayed silent. "I don't want you guys to get in trouble, but they are out to get us," this strange person says. My friends and I exchanged scared looks, feeling totally freaked out. After this guy left, we hopped the fence, and this is when we started to get scared. Nothing felt right about this place at all. There was graffiti all over this building, not like every abandoned building has some sort of graffiti. We continued to keep walking. My friend started to get sick and was feeling nauseous, so he went back home. So that only left us with 2 people, my friend Charlie and I. We moved in closer and saw a groundhog with a blown out head that appeared quite fresh. He remarked that we should get out of there, but I countered that we could find this kind of thing anywhere, it just happened to be in front of us at that moment. Ultimately, he decided to stick around. Eventually after a while he left because he also felt nauseous. I approached a door that had graffiti, and it said, "Stay out while you can," and an idea crossed my mind that someone must be playing tricks to deter people from entering, as it would definitely be considered trespassing. With curiosity piqued, I moved in closer, positioning myself around 5 feet away from the building, taking in the surroundings. As the door creaked open, a shadowy figure emerged, their voice echoing ominously in the dim light, asking what I was doing there. I managed to stammer a hesitant hello, nerves prickling at the back of my neck. The figure's gaze pierced through the darkness as they warned me that I was trespassing in a place I shouldn't be. I felt a chill run down my spine and quickly replied, apologizing for my ignorance, feeling the weight of unseen eyes watching my every move. What sounded like a girl suddenly burst into a terrifying scream, a haunting cry for help that sliced through the eerie silence. The sound was so raw and filled with desperation that it sent icy shivers racing down my spine, urging me to instinctively take a couple steps back, feeling the oppressive weight of fear in the air. At this time I could sense a sinister presence lurking just beyond my vision. She continued to cry out, her voice trembling with panic. She said, "Help me," a desperate plea that seemed to resonate in the stillness, echoing the dread that enveloped us both. I suddenly heard a gunshot, a sharp crack that shattered the tense silence, and in that moment, adrenaline surged through me, and I sprinted as fast as I could, my heart racing, driven by sheer instinct to escape the building. The next day, a voice in the back of my head told me to return. Despite the terrifying events that unfolded, an irresistible compulsion gripped me, demanding I go back, this time clutching an Ouija board, ready to face the darkness. I called my friends, and we rode our bikes again, but this time the police surrounded the building. The guy who was being arrested looked about 5'6", his eyes wide and unfocused, as if he were lost in another realm, under the influence of some hallucinatory drug. The only thing my friends and I heard was his frantic shout of "It wasn't even me." It sent shivers down my spine and triggered unsettling flashbacks of the chaos from yesterday. After a couple of hours, we approached the building. We quietly slipped inside, the air thick with tension, and decided to pull out the Ouija board. We continued to question the Ouija board, and gradually, we heard footsteps approaching, growing faster and louder as they got nearer. We decided to put the Ouija board back, and we ran out of there. We threw ourselves onto our bikes, adrenaline pumping, and pedaled away without a single glance back at the menacing shadows that lurked behind us. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had to return to that mysterious location. I really want some thrilling ideas for my return to the unknown. Should I bring more friends along, go solo, or keep asking questions? What do you think I should do? A swamp with swans in the middle of the woods near a creepy but unremarkable Williamsburg, Virginia, neighborhood. When I was about 16, in 2010, my family moved from Fairbanks, Alaska, to Williamsburg, Virginia. We wound up in this strange neighborhood. I won't disclose this particular neighborhood or the coordinates of the exact place in question, though I can find them very easily with Google Maps. It's probably still there. This neighborhood gave me this really cursed vibe, like Children of the Corn, and the house we were staying in seemed doubly eerie. We had just moved in, and as I was always the adventurer and the goth kid, I liked to explore the woods surrounding the neighborhood. Back then, I was raised having to entertain myself outside, and this translated even to my current adulthood years. I really enjoy getting intentionally lost. The incident felt so strange and uncomfortable and still makes me feel that way to this day. I went into the woods at the end of my street, and around 20 minutes in, I discovered a swamp. Steam or smoke rose out of it, and there were dead animal bones all around it. Instantly I'd thought the swamp to be toxic, but I was relieved to see that there were 2 swans on the water, dunking their heads in as swans do. I scoped it out and decided to go back another day. The second time I went, I decided a deer skull around the water's edge would look really cool in my room, so I put one from the edge of the swamp in my bag and headed home. Something about that swamp just made me feel like I was being drained. It felt like nihilistic depression, but as a locale. It was unsurprisingly after these events that I also began to suffer from the depression that eventually led to my alcoholism. As I headed out of the woods for home, everyone in the neighborhood on the way to my house was out on their front porch or lawn, just staring at me like ventriloquist dummies. They followed me with their gaze as I walked home. I felt like I shouldn't have taken the skull. As a polytheist later in life, I learned to trust this feeling. I dismissed it as childhood fear and superstition and placed this skull on my dresser in my room. The next morning I woke up with sores all over my face. I had somehow come into contact with poison ivy on my face, which was a surprisingly common occurrence for a young teenage adventurer in Virginia. I just felt like it was a bad idea to have taken the skull, but I figured it was just my fascination with the uncomfortable feelings of confronting mortality that made me fear it. The same fascination, however, caused me to cling to it. And so it remained on my dresser, and sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night feeling something was caressing my face. I'd hear a voice wake me from a dead sleep. After a week, I could no longer sleep. That's when the neighbors started showing up, wanting to welcome my family to the neighborhood. They brought cookies and called one family at a time, once a day, for a week. They seemed very conservative and polite, but so was my family, and so was I. Every family that visited asked me the same thing. My parents made it a point to tell them that my now scarred up and oozing face was not acne but poison ivy from the woods. The visitors asked me, "Oh, did you go to the swamp?" And I replied, "Yeah, the one at the end of the street." And they'd say, "Did you see the swans?" Initially, I found it exciting that someone else was aware of what I considered my secret discovery in the woods. However, after the second time they mentioned it, I began to notice their increasing fervor and implication in their voice, which my parents also observed. They asked me if I really did see any swans in the woods, and I told them I had. They found my claim strange and simply shrugged it off. I was heavily unnerved at this point and slightly hallucinating due to the insomnia I was experiencing. The feeling of something standing by me or over me became very real and very scary in my room even while awake and even during the day. It occurred to me to try something a 16-year-old Christian kid wouldn't usually do. I had a seance partly to make peace with whatever it was and partly because I was lonely and wanted a friend from beyond the veil. After a few Google searches, I found myself in the dark of my room, with only a candle lit, closing my eyes and addressing the entity directly. The room got frigid, and as I spoke to it, the television in my room turned on to display only static, my radio turned on by itself and played static too, and the skull fell off my dresser. I panicked, and the next morning, I didn't sleep much between then and the next morning, I stuffed the skull back into the bag and went out to the swamp. The swans were still there on the swamp. I instantly placed the skull at the edge of the swamp and apologized to whatever entity was angered that I took the skull. Like a man hypnotized, some strange insanity called me towards the center of the swamp, to a small peninsula in the middle of it where a tree grew. I spaced out, and it seemed there was some element of missing time. I tried to walk back from the tree, the grass gave way to mud, and I began to sink. Luckily, a giant 6-foot teen boy that I was, I pulled myself out of the mud after quite a bit of struggle. It extended halfway up my waist, and I walked home. The neighbors stared at me like they did when I took the skull as I walked home, muddied from the belly on down. I went into the house, and my parents asked what happened. I told them I had stepped in deep mud in the swamp and sunk. The creepy stuff slowed, but the next week, the landlord exploded with anger at my family because he did not want to make repairs to the house and told us to leave. He couldn't legally evict us, but he said he wouldn't make repairs and wanted us to leave, so he let us out of the lease and we moved. A girl in the neighborhood, who was my friend, was the first to ask about the swans. We kept in touch until the day I moved out, and then she shut down her Facebook, and I never heard from her again. In March of 2020, I planned to go back. I wanted to see if there were swans still there, but with more fleshed out knowledge of the occult and my own belief in the goddess Bridget. I have wondered for a long time if the dead animals were offerings to the swamp, as ancient Celts used to do. A pagan friend of mine in Pennsylvania liked to sink the bones of deer he caught in a swamp behind his house. My belief is that there may be something akin to a god or spirit there, and I'd like to make amends with whatever it is. However, I never got the chance. The day before I was scheduled to go to the swamp, Virginia enforced a mandatory quarantine, so I returned home and only managed to arrive after 6 flight changes. A few days later, the airlines canceled all flights. I'm not sure if I want to go back. Strange encounter with some kind of entity in the Appalachians. In February of this year I went to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, with my family, and we stayed in this adorable little cabin on a golf course. Anyway, my parents, Nana, my aunt and her daughter, and my brother, his girlfriend, and his dad all went out to explore the woods riding trails, and I, my sister, and my cousin all stayed at the cabin. About 30 minutes after they left, the 3 of us were playing Cards Against Humanity and laughing and joking about the cards we kept getting when we heard a knock at the front door. Now it's important to note that we were all sitting in the dining room. The dining room had about 8 to 10 windows around the room, one of which was pointed directly at the door. The door is angled toward the dining room. When the knock had happened, I had actually just gotten up to check on some cookies I had in the oven, so I was at a point where I couldn't see the door, but they could. My sister was staring at the door, and my cousin was looking at me with such an unexplainable expression that it kind of creeped me out, but I still set my mitts down and went to walk to the door. But about halfway there my sister called me from the back door. Mind you, I can still see my sister at the dining room table, and whatever it was called me by my legal government first name. My sister has not called me by my legal name since she was in 3rd grade. When that happened, I was on high alert and realized I probably shouldn't open the door because, duh. So I just went and sat down and chose to ignore it. Now, the night before, I had called my older cousin to debrief about a situation with my ex. During this call, I was sitting in the metal glider on the porch where the hot tub is because it felt like I was suffocating inside. As I'm sitting there, I noticed that on the golf cart bridge down the hill from me, something is standing there, looking directly at me. Now, at the time, I chalked it up to being a man standing there because that's not unusual for me, but as I'm finishing up my conversation with my cousin, I get this overwhelming sense of dread and danger, and I can't tell where it's coming from. So I quietly got up and went inside and watched a movie. Funny enough, the day after the events of the first paragraph unfolded, we went to an exotic car exhibit and an aquarium. Now all was good there, nothing strange, but when we were driving through the mountains to get back to the cabin, that feeling of dread came back. It was so overwhelming, I was in physical pain from how heavy my chest felt. About 5 minutes into the unbearable pain and sense of dread driving me nuts, it stopped. It just went away. No lingering ache in my chest. No dread, nothing. My parents looked at me as if they believed I needed to go to a hospital, while my brother's girlfriend at that time leaned over the backseat to check on me and ensure I didn't need anything. The whole thing was really weird and very disturbing. Can y'all help me to figure out what this entity was, because 4 months later I'm still going absolutely insane over it. Rain, woods, and darkness. This experience comes from a sewer line really close to the park where the previous weird things happened. We'd heard an old legend that a few people were ended in an old abandoned incinerator and that the killer had hidden the bodies in the sewer system and that there had been ghost sightings recently around the sewer system. So, as brave and stupid 16-year-old boys, we decided that if there were going to be ghosts around, we had to know about it. We were determined to confront the ghosts if possible. As I previously mentioned, our actions were utterly foolish. This was maybe a year before my encounter, so I didn't know what I was messing with, but I'm still confused why everyone wanted to go. Because they did know. Anyways, we left out with our rain boots on. This was a ducking sewer. It was disgusting and it proceeded to the tunnel. Now, standing outside the tunnel, it gets cold immediately, maybe because of the air inside being cooler, but it still seems unnaturally cold. After about 5 minutes of walking, we had to use our flashlights. It wasn't long before we came to a set of tunnels within the tunnel. Ryan suggested splitting up, and I instantly thought that was a bad idea. We all had cell phones, but no one had reception, and it was way too easy to get lost down here. Unfortunately, that didn't convince anyone, and we ended up splitting up. Me and Ryan, Corey and Kenny, and Josh and Paul. Once again, fake names. Those are some cheesy-ass names. 10 or 15 minutes after splitting up, I and Ryan heard a loud noise but couldn't decipher what it was because of the tunnel. If you've ever been in a cave, when there's all that space, sounds get hard to decipher. Same thing going on here. It sounded like it could have been a scream, but it also could have been from someone dropping something. We had no idea and decided that going back wasn't a good idea because we had no idea where they could be or how far down they were, or if anything had even happened. Just want to stress that I thought this shit through ahead of time, but no one ducking listened. Our tunnel came to an opening that merged with the waterway a bit past the park, so we turned around. On our way back we heard a definite yell and running through shallow water. Ryan and I looked at each other and pretty much decided that we should back out of the tunnel and hike through the woods back to the entrance, rather than run half blind through a tunnel. At that point we saw a bluish blur in the tunnel and heard a growl that sounded like a lion. For the tiniest split second, I thought I saw a blue feline human hybrid running towards us. I ran screaming from that thing and basically dove out of the tunnel, running as fast as I could towards where I expected my friends to be. I didn't notice this in that second, but Ryan wasn't with me. I don't know where he was, but he was at the entrance before me. He said he went a different way through the woods. We heard our friends running and asked them what happened when they came out, but they ran right past us. Dude, what the duck? What are we doing? Let's go, I said to Ryan. He nodded and started off towards them. We all ran until we were back on the familiar streets of our town. Josh and Paul puked, while I and Ryan tried to figure out what happened from Corey and Kenny and how they all had something happen to them. Corey wasn't speaking about it. He just kept saying, "Duck that, I'm never going back there." But Kenny spoke up. He said he didn't see anything at all until Corey had run. Corey was running away, and Kenny looked back and saw the same thing I did, but that it screamed. That was enough to make Kenny run. Josh and Paul said they didn't see anything but heard growling and ran because even if it was just a dog, they thought it could be rabid. Once they ran, they said it was like they weren't running. It's kind of like in a dream how you feel like you can't run fast enough or punch hard enough. After that, we all agreed that we wouldn't go back to the tunnels and decided to check the abandoned building tomorrow night instead. The next night, Josh and Paul said they weren't interested, and Corey and Kenny had gotten grounded for coming home late the night before. Oh, and smelling like a sewer. Their parents thought we were getting high in the sewers. So it was just me and Ryan. I can't help but notice he's always around. More on that in a bit. As we walked up to the building, I thought I saw a shadow near the door move and run away, but I didn't mention anything. I know how easy it is to be scared of shadows at night, near the woods. We tried the door, which, amazingly enough, was open. Not locked, or even closed. Wide open. The first room we encountered was a big open room with a trash compactor in it and 2 staircases leading up to the second floor. We took the closest staircase. Now, the thing about that staircase is that there is a chair, nailed to the wall, about 6 feet up. For no reason. It's the creepiest thing ever. On the second floor we found everything we expected to find. 2 offices, or what used to be offices. The building is pretty grimy now, a small lounge, and some bathrooms. In one of the offices were bones and candles. Bones of a rat and a cat. Whole skeletons. It scared the shit out of me. What was worse were the candles. They were red and black all over. We explored the rest of the building and found nothing. We didn't see or hear anything, but as we left, it started raining. I remember Ryan didn't say more than 1-word sentences on the way home. I think it's centered around him. He's always there. I've been to these places without him, and nothing happens. It kind of strikes me as odd, though. If these are Native American creatures, why are they attracted to him? He's not Native American. I have ancestry in my bloodline, but it's not strong. I need to do some research. The animal skeletons make me think someone bound them there. Then again, I don't know what the duck I'm talking about. Got any ideas? Adventure in a haunted abandoned park. Help me understand if it is a known form of spirit or something. 2 summers ago, a friend of mine invited me to go with her and some of her friends to an abandoned park in our city. I agreed, and we made our way there, entering through a hole in the gate. Once inside, we saw how nature had completely taken over the structures and pathways. We walked along a dark, narrow path surrounded by overgrown plants. Eventually, we reached a sort of amphitheater where we decided to stop for a few minutes. The path there had already made us feel uneasy and a bit anxious. Some of us, including me, felt like turning back and leaving the park, while others wanted to keep going. Since the majority wanted to continue, we reluctantly decided to follow them. We took a narrow path beside the amphitheater, so narrow that we had to walk in single file. The first to enter was the guy considered the most fearless in the group. He hadn't shown the slightest sign of fear during the whole exploration. But after just 3 seconds, he turned around and came back with a worried expression on his face, which really unsettled us, since he had been the most upbeat person until that moment. He told us he saw the plants moving strangely. Suddenly, we heard crying, the sound of a young girl crying. It was strangely loud and clear, which scared us all. Despite the fear, the brave guy said he felt a sense of responsibility to check if someone actually needed help, so he went back to investigate. Shortly after, we saw him running back, pale and terrified, telling us to run. The crying had grown louder, almost turning into a scream. That's when we all fled the park. While the others got into their cars, I jumped on my nearby parked scooter and we headed out. Once we were safe, the brave guy told us that what scared him the most was that, after pushing aside the plants and looking in the direction the crying was coming from, he saw absolutely nothing. And that's what truly terrified him. Something in the woods or fields. So this happened a few days ago, as I always try to logically work through them before I label them supernatural. This one doesn't stand up to any of my explanations. Context as always, I live in a very old multi-generation farmhouse in the middle of nowhere, in the Midwest. The property has its history like any other. There have been crimes, and there's a Revolutionary War cemetery, yes, revolutionary, not Civil War. Lots of French men, only a quarter mile up the road. We're locally known as a haunted farmhouse, which doesn't surprise us. Friends would sleep over as kids and then refuse to set foot on the property again. We lost several babysitters growing up who were afraid of the hallway. Just your classic growing up in a haunted house childhood. So why is this one weird? I'm pretty sure it wasn't a haunting. It's a peaceful countryside, rarely disturbed, but with many wild predators. For this reason, we typically don't venture past the back patio once the sun goes down. However, recently, we had a pool installed. This pool is fairly far out in the yard and a little closer to the woods than I really like. Despite this, I'll go out to it if I'm not alone. My siblings are big on night swimming, and again, since I'm not alone, I join them. So this was around 10 p.m. a few days ago. My siblings and I were relaxing in the pool and just generally goofing around. Plenty of animal noises to let us know the night was safe. Frogs, birds, and crickets are all good things to give you an indication that nothing is wrong if you live near a farm in Woodland. We didn't have any lights beyond the string of fairy lights my dad draped around the edge of the pool, and then those only provided enough light to see each other. Just farm kids being farm kids. Until what we all swore was a voice whispered "Hey" from the edge of the woods. Now, we are all immediately on high alert, and apparently so were the animals, because it all fell silent at the voice. Creeps wander their way onto the property sometimes, and people have broken in before. They see the old house and assume we're wealthy. We're not, so we all assumed it was another weirdo. The problem was none of us knew what to do. It was night, we had no lights, we had no weapons, and we were too far from the house to call for help. Luckily for me, my brother has recently grown from a cute little kid to a very imposing and intimidating man, and one who's not afraid to take charge. So he calls back in the firmest voice he can manage, a simple "Hey." Well, as soon as he does, something bolts out from under the brush, faster than any person should be able to. It looks sort of like a person, but not. The limbs were too long, and it was running but in a strange mixture of on all fours and then bipedal, like it wasn't sure which one it was supposed to do. Its head didn't seem right. I can't explain it beyond that. It was like someone had tried to mold a human face from clay but didn't quite have the skills to do so. It didn't head for the pool, instead shooting into the cornfield behind us. Now we're scared. Again, we're still thinking one of the local crackheads had simply taken too much and is messing around. Mind you, we're still terrified. Crackheads can be more dangerous than any paranormal creature. Sure, Bigfoot might get blamed for the disappearance of the occasional hiker, but crackheads off people on the regular. So we did what we'd been taught to do when danger was around as kids. We all hopped out of the pool and stood in a tight group. There are 4 of us, so we all stand in a little square with our backs to each other, our way of keeping eyes open. We had barely shuffled a few feet toward the house when a bone-chilling animalistic scream echoed from the same field this thing had just disappeared into. Not an angry scream, a pained one. Feline, deep in its throat. Bobcats are native to the area, and cougars have been known to wander in, so it's not unlikely one had been in the field. What really had us questioning was what could have made it make that sound. There are no predators bigger than these around. The area has a small but stable population of black bears, but they don't tend to mess with the other predators, and if there'd been a fight, we'd have heard more than the scream. Then the smell hit us, blood. Fresh and lots of it. No doubt the result of the animal in the field. But with the strange figure darting into the field only a few moments before we'd heard it and smelled it, it told us all what we needed to know. Then another voice. Oddly monotone and different from the soft one the thing had spoken with when we were in the pool, coming from in the field. It somehow sounded like a yell and a perfectly level request all at the same time. "Come here. I want you to come here, please." We bolted. It takes a lot to make us panic, we've grown up around the weirdest of the weird. But the moment that strange voice demanded we come to it, we knew playtime was over, and we all made a break for the house together. Into the house, lock the door, and all immediately run to my brother's bedroom. His is the biggest and our unofficial meeting spot. It also is the only bedroom that faces the woods and field. We kept the lights off and just sat in the quiet for a minute. We would normally all laugh it off once we were in relative safety, but for some reason, we just didn't this time. Then the voice called, louder but still strangely cold. Still coming from the direction of the field. The window muffled it enough that we couldn't understand it, and it only made us more nervous. My sister cracked the window the tiniest bit, just to let the sound in. It was still calling for us. "Hey! Come here. Come here, please. I want you to come here, please." Then it appeared again, just out of the cornfield. Just on the edge. Its skin, though flesh-toned, had a strange gray quality to it. It hunched in on itself, sort of like its long limbs were too heavy for it to hold up. It didn't seem to see us in the window, instead circling the pool twice, like it was looking for us. I guess it didn't hear us run for the house. We watched it as it stood there for a second. It called again, sounding angrier this time. "Hello. Come here. Come here." We didn't move. It felt like an hour we watched it, but it was probably only a few minutes, to be honest. Then, much slower than it had appeared, it began to shamble away back the way it came in the woods. All the while, it called, "Come here. Hello. Hello. Come here, please." Its gait was uneven, like its hips weren't the same height. It smacked rather aggressively at something that I couldn't see in the dark. I know, a frustrated gesture of duck. When I see it, though, I caught a flash of its hand, Way too big for a person's. It looked almost right, but like the fingers of each finger had 4 joints instead of 3. With that, it shambled away, the sound of its strange footsteps disappearing as soon as it passed back into the shadows. So, yeah, WTF was that thing? Because I have never seen anything like it, even after living in a paranormal hotspot for so long. Usually when I see something spooky or unusual, I snap a pic and let it go. But this? This was new. This was scary. It felt dangerous. We went out and searched the field the next day, when the sun was high and bright. We didn't find anything. No bobcat, no blood, nothing. So what were we smelling? And what animal did we hear? I get the uneasy feeling it might have been trying to lure us away from the house, perhaps trying to imitate a person in trouble. But that doesn't explain why it didn't seem to pursue us when we ran for the house or even realize we were gone. My sister suggested it might be blind. I don't care if it was blind. I just never want to swim at night again. Urban exploring at an abandoned hotel. I'm a 21-year-old guy, and I've been exploring abandoned places since I was like 16. I've traveled extensively across the US, visiting hospitals, asylums, warehouses, and even a nuclear power plant on one occasion. Over the years, I've taken different groups of people to these places, and it seems like every one of them are hardcore believers in the paranormal. I've always been interested in it, but I've never really believed in it. The people I take are always saying they are hearing whispers or seeing ghosts when I can clearly see that the wind is blowing the blinds in a building and it's making a noise that scares them. There's only been a handful of times where I'm like, yeah, okay, I can't explain what that noise was. That brings me to what happened last night. So here I am with my roommate looking up places we haven't been yet, and this one old abandoned hotel pops up. The Higdon Hotel. Looks really cool, read some stories about it. I really want to go. And it turns out it's only an hour and a half away. We geared up and started heading out. This location is situated deep in the woods, far from civilization. Kinda spooky but not worse than other places. It's raining pretty lightly, which really adds to the aesthetic. We crawl in through one of the windows and start checking the place out. It's a really old-looking building, kind of like something I remember seeing on one of my elementary school field trips to some old-timey place. My roommate is recording on his GoPro because we have talked about making a YouTube channel, but I'm indifferent. We head to the second floor, and that's when you can actually tell it used to be a hotel, with identical rooms and such. We decide to split up, me in one room and him in the room across the hall. I walk around the room a little bit, there's a fireplace and an entrance to the back hallway that connects all the bathrooms, nothing really notable. I go back to the entrance to the front hallway, where I can see my roommate Tyler vlogging in the other room, so I decide to look out the window. No matter where I'm at, I'm more nervous about getting caught by an angry neighbor than I am about something paranormal, something no one I go with seems to share. As I'm looking at the window towards the houses or cabins in the distance, I begin to listen to the rain. Despite barely raining outside, it sounds like it's a hurricane in the house, which is odd. I listen more and begin to notice a pattern to the rain. I figure there must be something on the roof making the water flow weird off the roof. After a while I begin to hear something else kind of behind the noise of the rain. I hear footsteps, heel, and then a stop, like someone was stopping to avoid being heard. I instantly look over to the other room, and Tyler's sitting down, so I know the noise wasn't him. I ask him if he's heard the footsteps too. He says no and accuses me of making it up to scare him. I've visited locations where individuals engage in such behavior, which deeply annoys me. Exploration is a serious endeavor for me, as it's uncertain if any action, sound, or illumination could result in detection and prosecution. I ended up explaining to Tyler in detail what I heard and said something along the lines of, and that's when I heard the footsteps. Then, clear as day to me, I hear a woman ask, "You can hear me?" I am immediately blinded by Tyler's flashlight and a "Did you hear that?" After that he took what I said a bit more seriously. Tyler later explained to me that he couldn't quite hear what the voice said, but he knew it came from the room I was in. We decided to regroup instead of splitting up, and we headed to a room I can only describe as an attic. It was on the same floor, but man, did it look like a stereotypical attic you would see in a place like this. We sat down and began to talk about what had happened, and I decided to start my voice recorder on my phone because I didn't trust his GoPro to catch any sounds while it was raining like it was. About 10 minutes after I had started it, Tyler and I were both startled by a tapping noise in the corner of the room that lasted about 5 seconds. The strange thing is, the recording I have, the noise we heard versus the noise we recorded, doesn't match up at all. 1. The length is completely different, the recording is less than a second, and what we heard was way longer. I've played it for a couple of people, and I've heard it's a voice, a door shutting or opening, all doors are stuck shut, or something falling. But not a tap, like we heard. After we heard this tapping, we decided to do a walk around the whole place. Nothing really eventful happened except Tyler said he heard sobbing coming from the attic room after we left, but that was it. I couldn't find any evidence of that in the voice recording. After we left, we did a bit more research. I don't know if it's true, but a family used to live there in the 60s, but they boarded up the top floor because they were afraid of it. They claimed to hear a woman's voice sobbing, footsteps, and chains being dragged around the floor. But I am not sure if that source is reliable. Maybe an encounter. I need opinions. I and some friends of mine like to go to abandoned buildings pretty often. I'm familiar with the feeling of anxiety or fear of being caught or encountering a volatile homeless person, etc. That's just how it is. The places are creepy, period. But today was different. We started off by going to this one church, and all was well. We got photos, explored, etc., and had a good time, but in the second place we entered, also a church, I just immediately had a heightened sense of anxiety for some reason, but no matter, we keep pushing, we are taking more photos, and the way this church is built is that there is a Sunday school on the bottom floor, with a chapel on top of it as the second floor. Well, we moved slowly out of the chapel and down the stairs to the first floor, where we found a kitchen and small office with a little rec area, so we are exploring this first floor, and keep in mind all windows on the first floor are boarded up, so there is very little natural light in there, and we both eventually come to this door. My buddy opens it and steps in, holding the door open for me, so we are basically standing in this doorway side by side. The big thing for me is that when we opened this door and looked in, there was enough light to see without lights, and as soon as I turned my flash off and went to take a photo, I heard a guttural like gag/wheeze from the next doorway through this room, and I started to freak out. I had so much adrenaline, I've never been that scared before, so I just immediately said, "Let's go," and my friend looked at me confused, and I just booked it out of there, and once we were back in the street, he asked what happened and told me he heard a puppy whining in there. Baseline is I know it might be cliché, but I've heard of spirits that pretend to be things they're not, and I wonder if that's what was happening? Not gonna discount the fact that again, it could have been a homeless guy trying to scare us off, but I've had that happen before, and I've never felt that primal raw fear so bad before that I've run out of a place without my friends, especially over something I didn't physically see. Anyways, I'm curious. I just wanted to get a second opinion, maybe from someone who might know more than me. I had a supernatural encounter in an Irish haunted house. I used to hate everything related to horror. In 2015 my boyfriend invited me to Loftus Hall, a haunted manor in Ireland, for a paranormal lockdown. He told me we were going to spend a few hours locked in this manor. If I remember right, it was from around 8 p.m. to 2 a.m., and there would be rituals to contact ghosts. After a lot of resistance, I decided to go. Initially I thought I would get there and there would be people behind walls or doors and chains to scare us. I was prepared for that. Actually, it was a bunch of fabricated stuff to give us a jump scare. Upon arrival, we were exploring the exterior of this place. Loftus Hall is a huge mansion on the Hook Peninsula of Wexford. The place is in bits, but it is stunning. All the windows were covered with wood, so I didn't know what to expect, really. The little beach that only fits 2 people at a time was creepy enough for me, but the adventure hadn't even started yet. When we got into the manor, the ghost hunters explained we would be going through around 4 rooms plus the cemetery. We couldn't drink alcohol, smoke, or use any type of substance there. They told us that it dated back to the 1600s, and throughout history a lot of things had happened there. It was a home to a family where the daughter tragically died there after giving birth to a child and being locked in a room by her dad. Her name was Anne. A convent, which we all know has its heavy reputation. A lot of them were in the cemetery at the back, and a nun died on the stairs. And it was also a hotel, with a couple that ran it for a long time until it basically went into ruins. The whole lockdown was creepy and different from what I thought. There were no jump scares. We walked around this manor, going to specific rooms and listening to the stories. We played Ouija, and people would swear that it was moving by itself and we were getting some messages. There was this lady who kept saying something was touching her, and in my head I was thinking she was paid to say that. I believed it was a waste of money, but I was glad that my boyfriend was enjoying himself. Then we entered the third room. It was the front room of the manor, and for some reason, when I got in, I felt comfortable, with no tension at all. It was dark, but as I got in, there was an old 3-seater couch to my right in front of a little bathroom with a half-open door. The room was big and full of windows, but they were covered by wood. In some parts I could see the light of the moon coming in from outside, and I could hear the sea waves outside. I just knew that that room would be stunning in its prime. I sat on the couch beside two strangers. They were young and male, and throughout the whole lockdown, I noticed them giggling. My boyfriend was sitting on the couch's arm beside me, right in front of the bathroom. The hunters were telling us the story of the hotel. How the couple running it enjoyed throwing parties, etc. As it happened, I saw a little red light coming out of the bathroom and floating fast around the room. I thought that someone had a laser, but I couldn't find where it was coming from. I looked at my boyfriend and pointed it to him. He didn't give it much attention and kept paying attention to the story. The light flashed around the wall for a few minutes, but nobody was looking at it. Then it faded away. Then I got a strong smell of alcohol. I just thought that the two strangers beside me were drinking before the event. And then I smelled cigarettes, but it was a bit different from my own cigarette I used to smoke. It had a strong perfume of tobacco, stronger than I had ever smelled. Once again I thought the guys beside me were to blame. In my head it was probably tobacco from another country or maybe cigars, but I didn't give it too much attention. I wanted the light to come back so I could show it to my boyfriend this time. The hunters stated that nothing was happening in the room and we needed more energy. So they asked all of us to stand, place us in a circle, and tell us to call Michael out loud and welcome him to the group. Michael was the hotel owner that slept in that room with his wife. So then we started. Michael, could you please introduce yourself and get in touch with us? People were all saying it out loud as I observed. Then I decided to join them. I said, "Come on, Michael, come to us." Suddenly my right arm started raising by itself. It was as if something was lifting it for me. I looked at it as it lifted, palms down about 60 degrees. Then I called my boyfriend's attention. "Babe," I said and looked at him, and that is when my other arm started going up and stopped at around 30 degrees. I tried to lower my arm, but it was after there was something supporting it and not allowing me to lower it. I started feeling a vibration on my lower back and then also a vibration on my upper lip to the left. My brain started processing how that wasn't normal, and I said, "I want it to stop, está amarrado em nome de Jesus," and my arms fell both at the same time. It didn't hurt me, but I was terrified. Then the same woman as before said, "Oh." Something pinched my butt, which distracted everyone from me. The lockdown went on. The next room had this bed with a baby cot and a doll in the middle, and we sat along the walls waiting for something to happen. I believe to this day that I destroyed the event for everyone else from the moment that happened to me because I was whispering "Ta amarrado em nome de Jesus" for the rest of my time there. Nothing happened in this room, and we moved to the cemetery, where I kept whispering my prayer in Portuguese and staring at the sky the whole time to not take a chance to see a ghost nun or child there. The sky is the most beautiful sky I have ever looked at. There were so many shooting stars that I still don't know if that was special for that night or just normal. Seriously, from the moment I started counting, it was 11 shooting stars. So beautiful. In the end, one of the lady hunters came to chat with me. She said that position I was in looked like I was dancing with a man in the old style. Like one hand on the shoulder and the other on the man's hand. She said that Michael was known for drinking a lot and being very charming towards ladies at the balls they threw at the hotel. I never mentioned to anyone there I smelled the alcohol or the smoke or that I saw the light. I also never mentioned the vibration on my lower back, which matches even more her theory that I was taken to dance by a charming ghost. There were other women there, but I do have a look that people call exotic, so maybe that is why he picked me? We did a cleanse before leaving so everything that was from there stayed there. Thank God we did that. After that experience, I have come to believe in ghosts. My husband believes I was hypnotized during the activity. In any way, it was one of the most incredible things that ever happened to me. I used to travel my state frequently for work. I'd end up in these small rural towns and end up working until 8:30 or 9 p.m. most nights. I'd grab a quick bite and then kind of cruise the towns randomly. They were always dead quiet by 9:30. At some point I started exploring abandoned buildings in these towns because I was so bored. One night I drive up to this old, abandoned hotel. It was some version of the old Holiday Inn Holidome design. If you aren't familiar with the Holidome, it's a 60s or 70s hotel layout that had a pool, mini golf, arcade, etc. inside with rooms on 2 floors around the perimeter. Kind of like an indoor resort. I pried off a plywood board covering the front door and climbed through the broken glass on the other side. As soon as I was in, I was creeped out and felt as if I wasn't alone. Not like teenagers party here, like there's something dangerous here. Listening intently, I didn't hear anything, so I pushed through the lobby towards the inner area. In front of me was the entrance into the dome area, and to the left and right were long hallways of rooms. I pointed my light down both and saw nothing but gloom and the detritus of better days. I stepped into the cavernous common area and was engulfed by darkness and stale, thick air. Very little ambient light penetrated this space, and I felt more vulnerable than I ever have before. I was surprised how intact the space was as I looked around. It was almost orderly. I made my way to the pool area. The fence surrounding it and the gate were intact, so I jumped over. The slide was still standing and clean, which felt off. The lounge chairs were still neatly arranged. I shined my beam into the empty pool. At the bottom of the pool was something weird and terrifying. There was a bunch of random stuff, not trash, but pots and pans, a pillow, pens/pencils, some dishes and utensils, batteries, etc. Just a mishmash. Here's the thing, though. It was all laid out in an orderly fashion and covered the entire bottom of the shallow end. It was intentional but not organized. Just rows of perfectly aligned things. Well, I got the heebie-jeebies and decided to GTFO. I vaulted over the fence and stumbled onto the ground. I heard someone ducking laugh. A gibbering giggle that I couldn't see. Now, I'm trying not to panic and run blindly, but I was so ducking scared it felt nearly impossible to keep my cool. I stood and tried to get my bearings in the dark, but this place was huge, and I wasn't exactly sure which direction was the exit. As I stood there shining my light around, I heard a door open and some rustling movement. That was it for me. I sprinted in the exact opposite direction of where I heard the noise. I got lucky because that was the right direction for the main lobby where I had entered. As I burst through the entry into the lobby, I saw movement from my right side. A body flew out of the hallway I had passed on my way in. A man wearing shorts only was in front of me now. Between me and my escape. He appeared to be deranged, screamed "Mother Ducker," and charged at me. I don't know why, but I ran straight at him in response. At the last second I juked around him like Barry ducking Sanders. I hit that opening to the outside without hesitation. When I looked over my shoulder, I didn't see him following me, but I could hear multiple voices screaming in what sounded like rage. I hightailed it to my car and drove back to my hotel. I didn't sleep well, and it was a while until I explored a vacant building again. Encounter in cemetery at 3 a.m.? I've always been intrigued by the unknown. I don't find myself to be particularly spiritual but more of a skeptic who seeks to be proven wrong. I recently moved in with a girl who comes from a long line of Wiccan witches from Puerto Rico, and she is very spiritual and into numerology and the paranormal and has a history with preemptive dreams and synchronicities that seem to be very in your face. Since she and I have become closer, I've begun noticing some of these things and experiencing things here or there myself that I certainly cannot explain. 2 nights ago we decided to microdose on shrooms, 2 very tiny caps each for reference. Shortly after we took them, the power in the entire town went out. We had 75 miles per hour winds, yet we had this grand idea to dress in all black and go practice witchcraft at the beach, as you do. We grabbed our tapestries, crystals, and candles and set out for the nearest beach. While getting into her car, she pointed out the time on her car clock. 2:22 a.m. When we got there it was too windy to set intentions with the tools we had brought, so we laid the tapestry out and stared. We stayed for a while and decided we wanted to go to a different beach that was about 15 to 20 minutes away from where we were. While driving to the second beach, I began looking for a radio station with a clear song coming through. Most of them were fuzzy, but finally something came in very clearly. Another Brick in the Wall by Pink Floyd. It had been a minute since I last heard this song, and we are both singing along and jamming out. I realize we are coming up on a cemetery, so I tell her to make a right. Something overcame me where I had this intense urge to go to this cemetery. I know they are typically dark places, which are the kinds of things I usually gravitate to, but there was something about the potential power that was there that I felt a need to harvest. I felt no fear regarding it. I kept having visions of myself sitting in the middle of the cemetery, on a tapestry, and connecting with the environment in a very powerful way. The thought really excited me. We get out of the car, and I immediately begin walking towards the entrance. It's at this point that everything quite literally goes pitch black. The wind was powerful, and I couldn't see anything. I am aware that it was a new moon that evening, which naturally made it dark, but even with it you can still see outlines of what's around you. No, it was as if someone had taken black acrylic paint to my eyeballs, or better yet, like I had gone completely blind. I didn't mind though and got walking through the wind to get to that entrance. It was at this moment that I felt something slap me in the face. My first reaction was that it was something flying through the wind, but there was a very skin-like feeling to it. It felt like a hand. It did not feel like debris. Despite that happening, I wanted to keep walking and find the entrance until I took a couple of steps further and suddenly logic had washed over me and I realized, nope. I turn around and say out loud, I think it's time we leave. My roommate was walking in a completely different direction than I was, and she seemed to snap out of it, ran up to me, and said, I'm just going to stick close to you," as she grabbed my arm and we ran back to the car. It was a very visceral fear I had upon coming to the realization that I may not be in a safe space if I kept going. Kind of like when you're a child, and the fear of monsters under your bed causes you to dramatically lift your feet and stay hidden under the covers. We got back into the car and started driving back to the second beach we had intended on going to. She starts to tell me that when we got out of the car, she briefly lost sight of me. What she describes is something like me splitting off into two, or some mirror of me walking in the opposite direction I was. She wasn't sure which one was actually me, so she went left and began following what she thought was me in the opposite direction that I was actually going. It wasn't until she had heard me in the distance say, "I think it's time to leave," that she realized she was not following me. So she ran over and decided she was going to stick very close to me. After discussing our bizarre experiences at the graveyard, we decide to put music back on to lift our spirits a bit. I turn the radio on and start shuffling through the stations. I find a song that's coming in very clear and realize I know it, so I decide to keep it on. Within seconds, I realize it was the exact same song we had found before, Another Brick in the Wall by Pink Floyd, but on a separate radio station. The song was at the exact same place it had left off when we turned the radio station off before. My roommate got spooked and decided to turn around from the beach and go straight back home. As we were getting out of the car to go inside, she pointed out the time on her car. 3:33 a.m. She ended the night with cleansing spells, and we spoke very openly about everything we felt and experienced. As someone who is just beginning to open myself up to the possibility that there is a spiritual aspect to our world, I'm still pretty puzzled. There were a lot of odd coincidences going on that night, but I'm curious as to what this community's take might be. Or perhaps point me in the direction of where this information would be better suited. The Devil's Footprints. About 15 years ago I traveled to Spain with my best friend. We were both around 20 at the time, living carefree young adult lives. We were just two guys enjoying a great time together. We were in a warm country, without a meticulous itinerary, allowing us to live in the present moment and engage in activities that suited our mood. My friend, who originally came from Spain, still had family there, which made the month-long travel very affordable since they offered us free accommodation, a roof over our head, a working bathroom with fresh showers, and 3 meals a day if we liked. They also gave us a spare key so we could come and go just as we liked. During the day we often went swimming to keep us as cool as possible, and during the evenings we often explored the city, went for drinks, or went to a club. Toward the end of our month-long stay there, my friend's uncle, who was the father of our host family, took us out for a fishing trip on a certain day. We had a lot of fun out on the sea, although the trip was cut short because we had a bit too much fun consuming beers. The burning summer sun, too many beers, and the wavy feeling of being out on the open sea made for a very bad case of seasickness for both my friend and me. His uncle thought it was funny, though. After having had an afternoon rest, or as they called it, siesta, and a very fulfilling late-night dinner, we decided to go back out to the beach. We took a couple of cold beers with us, however, we didn't take many, as we were still feeling a bit groggy from before. It was a beautiful night, open sky, no clouds, little to no light pollution, making the twinkling stars very visible and present. On a still warm but comfortable summer night with a light breeze and a starry sky, being on vacation and young made it the perfect moment to talk about the meaning of life. About what we liked to achieve one day, about what was worth it, or what wasn't. If there were any other intelligent life out there, if we would live for another 1,000 years or not. The crashing of the waves against the sand of the beach and the rocks was very calming and was lulling us into a meditative state. Only that moment in that place seemed to exist. There was no outside world, no life with responsibilities, no obligations, no expectations, and no working hard to get somewhere. It was that moment we noticed something was off. The crashing of the sea against the sand of the beach sounded different? Harder? Like something was moving in it? Under the waves a vague shape started to form. As it neared the shoreline, it started to get the shape of a dog. We both looked at each other and realized that we had been holding our breaths for about a minute while the dog crawled from the sea to the shoreline. The tension broke because we both burst out laughing because we had been so easily startled by something so innocent. But then my friend asked the question that made the newly regained light mood go away in an instant. Where did that dog come from, though? There's no one around, and we never saw any dog go into the sea? Neither was there any dog swimming around, it came from under the water. Now that he had worded it like that, it seemed rather curious, and actually that dog seemed pretty big for any existing dog I had ever seen. As it was crawling along the beach, solely illuminated by the first quarter moon, it looked the size of a small horse but in the shape of a dog or wolf with matted fur. It had very prominent, bony joints in its knees and elbows, and walked a bit awkwardly. My friend and I were debating if we should follow the beast and decided we did actually want to find out what exactly it was. I took out my phone and started to film it. For as far as any 2008 smartphone could film in the dark. By the time we reached the place at the beach where it had left the water, it had already reached the dunes and disappeared in them. We saw it had left a track and decided to follow that into the dunes. We weren't prepared for what we saw next, though. The beast had left a track in the wet sand in the form of individual hoof prints in a straight line instead of a crisscross pattern as with any four-legged animal. No horse could have walked in such a line, and even though it had looked like the size of a horse, it hadn't looked anything like the shape of a horse. Neither were horses aquatic animals. We followed the track to the dunes and went over the first dune when we saw the beast standing about 10 meters from us, in a speck of moonlight. It didn't look anything like a dog either. It looked like it had the lower half of a goat and the upper half of something like a werewolf. The dimensions were off, the shapes were awkward. It was such a big animal neither of us could place under any existing animal we knew of, with matted fur and bony joints, that had just come out of nowhere from under the water but clearly could walk and survive on the land as well, that left hoof marks in a straight line. Because we had just stumbled through the bushes closely behind the beast and had given away our presence, it slowly started to turn its head towards us. While it was turning towards us, it stood on its hind legs. Not only was this an animal that came from under the water, but it could also survive on the land and walk on four legs. It could clearly stand and walk very well on two legs as well. The beast gained even more size by standing on its hind legs and must have been around 2.5 meters big. It stared at us with red glowing eyes. These were not to be mistaken for the eyes of any nocturnal animal with reflective eyes, these were actually glowing from within. I felt stuck in my spot, completely frozen, but luckily my friend, who was 2 steps behind me, had the mind to run away and pull me with him. We ran for what felt like an hour but must have been closer to 10 minutes because we reached the house of my friend's family before we knew it. The beast hadn't followed us, or at least not all the way. We went in and told the entire story to his uncle. Of course he thought we must have been still drunk and tired and had seen things that weren't there. But when we showed him the recording, he went pale. He took a shovel. A gun would have been more impressive against a beast like that, but it's not like the average European just has guns lying around, and asked us to show him where we had seen it. We searched for almost 2 hours but didn't find the beast again. However, we did find the hoof marks, albeit a bit washed up because of the current of the sea. We went back home, trying to make something of what we had just seen, but couldn't. We needed to know what animal we had just seen. We started Googling all kinds of things. Of course, with the lower half of the beast looking like a goat, we stumbled upon a lot of myths about the devil, which we discarded. We had seen an actual live beast that wasn't known by humanity yet and wanted to know if any other people had ever seen anything like it. It was only when we Googled hoof marks one straight line that we stumbled upon the term the devil's footprints. So it was an actual thing, or at least something that had supposedly been seen before according to myths and stories. But they must have had some truth to them since they described exactly what we had just seen with our own eyes. The few days we had left in Spain, we spent our nights out with my friend's uncle trying to find the beast again, but to no purpose, as we never saw it. When I came home a few days later, I saved the recording on my hard drive, not sure what to do with it yet. I didn't want to be the crazy guy that had seen the devil, because I still don't believe I did. I just want to know what animal this was and how come we haven't documented this beast yet. I tried to forget about it but couldn't, and a year later I decided I wanted to publish the recording in the hope anyone could make any sense of what we had seen that night. The uncle of my friend hadn't seen the beast in all that time and had asked around in the town if anyone had ever seen it, which they hadn't. I had switched phones by then, but luckily I had the recording saved on my desktop, where I had replayed it at least 1,000 times. I booted up my desktop, and something was wrong. I had to restart my desktop a couple of times, and after booting it up in safe mode, I got the message that my hard drive had crashed. I tried whatever was possible, but I couldn't recover the recording in any way. 15 years later, I continue to puzzle over the identity of the beast we encountered, but my friends now regard it as a mere conversation starter. The experience has left a lasting mark on both that friend and his uncle. My friend even took it so far as to go live in Spain again, near the beach where it all happened, and still continues to actively look for the beast to this day. Maybe one day he'll find it?